We're ready when you are, Carrie. Okay. Okay, as we reconvene for the afternoon session, I think we'd all agree that this morning's was very informational and educational. We appreciate what you put together, you and your staff, Chief, and thank you for that. So let's kind of dive right into the afternoon session, and you're up.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Board, Chair. Lots of good information this morning. Certainly should say thank you to Dave for helping put this together and starting this. I wanted to start with our mission statement. And our mission statement here at Sedona Fire is we help people through safe, friendly, and dedicated service. So SFD, safe, friendly, and dedicated. And our vision is that the Sedona Fire District will be a community leader in its emergency services to make our district one of the safest places in the world to live, work, and explore. And so those two statements, to me, really provide a lot of direction on what drives my decisions as the fire chief and our organization. And I often think about those two, mission and vision, on when we talk about our decisions at the office. But I want to include the other part of that is the fire district board philosophy that you guys may or may not be aware of exists. And certainly at some point in time, if you ever chose to redo this, you certainly can, but I'll read it for you. The Sedona Fire District Governing Board recognizes that our employees are our most valuable assets. SFD's goal is to be recognized and respected as an organization that provides its employees with a rewarding and fulfilling work experience and does the utmost to protect their safety. The SFD Governing Board directs and entrusts the management and staff of the Sedona Fire District to provide a wide range of community services. We will attempt to preserve a balance between the community and organizational commitment by continuously improving our planning process. We strive to achieve maximum civic and financial responsibility for the public we serve. The Sedona Fire District will maintain its strategic advantage by playing a major role in developments affecting our community's services. So I just wanted to share that with you, give some perspective of kind of where your philosophy is as a board, or at least where it was in fiscal 2016-18 strategic plan. I don't know if that still rings true. This is your philosophy, so I can't say whether that would be my philosophy if I was a board member or not, but let that sit with you guys for a while. It's in your board handbook on like one of the first pages, so you can read that to yourself at night as you go to sleep or something. And if you like, I can do an audio recording for you. You can put it on repeat or something. And so that's it. So I wanted to just start with that first. And any questions or comments or thoughts, ideas on that? Okay. So as I look at the strategic plan, many of you were part of the strategic plan here. Let me see if I can pull this up. So the strategic plan we worked on in February of 2018. We're just kind of getting it finalized in its parts and pieces here. So Carrie's done an amazing job creating the actual pictorial part of this, and gives you a lot more depth to what our plan looks like. So we're just about to launch this, and we'll probably have it to you at the May board meeting to approve and adopt and be part of. All the beautiful photos are provided by our own Jason Coyle.
We got some typos in there already. We got to do some corrections.
Yeah, so there's a question about that, and so we've decided, and certainly if the board has a different direction, instead of trying to change everything as it relates to this was created in February, and we opted to keep it that way. If you, as a board, want to change it,
timing's everything.
You just tell me. But there's other pieces where Pichura's in there or not in there, and different people. Betty might have been there, so we're trying to keep it without
That's fine.
Going crazy because we'll never finalize the document. So, but again, that was Heidi's plan. Let's see. So introduction, I'm not going to read this introduction, but it talks about the strategic plan being focused and flexible. And so, sometimes people believe a strategic plan is really like set in stone. And I wish we could be that good, an organization be rock solid. Here's our path, and here's how we're going to operate, and we will not deviate from that. And that's just not realistic in today's world. So again, it talks about that flexibility piece being really important, and how it's part of it. And well, I don't want to get into all the minutiae. I want to get to the actual headings. Our goal in this is actually longer than what. Let me go back here slightly. our goal is to have a one-year plan that we go out every year and add to, and so we've got kind of a 5-year plan here, but it's kind of based on one-year increments. So we're not really trying to guess what we're doing going down the way. I just have the values up there, and also our critical pieces to kind of how we operate. And I like the personal accountability and professionalism, adhering to a strong code of moral and ethical conduct. And I think that's really important for all of us in the operations and administrative side, but also as well for you as board members who are part of this strategic plan. So with that, what we did here, there's a bunch of assumptions I'm not going to read to you, but there's a bunch of assumptions that if they don't occur, make some of these plans maybe more less reliable or less practical. So if these things do not happen, you know, the outcome could be different, you know, and we may change our focus. So these are all there, not for you to spend too much time on. So what we did was we looked at, instead of having last strategic plan, we had very broad categories. We'll provide great service and do it really well. Definitely a goal, but how do we capture that and quantify that we're actually making progress? So we really spent more time blocking this out into 15, 17 different sections now, so it's much more finite in each of its areas. And so I'm not going to go through all of them again. I'm just going to, human resource management, and we talk about that one. I'll stop at one or two of them that I want to talk about. There's action plan objectives for each one, and there's a person actually responsible. This one got updated, I guess, so Heidi was in charge, so she said, I'll put my name on there. But I'm not putting, we went back and forth. Some things got changed, some didn't. If we want, we can change it. We got some typos. There's a health and safety one right there. I think this is not the final copy. I'm using one that was sent. We did a final revision, I believe, so my apologies. I didn't have it electronically. So if you see a typo, it's probably been fixed. But health and safety, a big thing for us. Some of the things we talk about is like our UTV training. So we have UTVs, and they do wonderful thing for our responses, but we realized that we really didn't have a lot of training, official training in that. I think all of our folks were capable of providing the services and driving those vehicles, but we sent some people to UTV instructor training so we could teach our people how to do it and what safety equipment should be on it and what radios and communication devices and all these things. And so whereas we had a UTV for many years and we just kind of had it, and we're elevating all those things, and this is just one example of the type of things that we're doing. Financial management system, we just got done talking about all that, so we don't need to go through that. But the CAFRs right there is one of our goals, working with GFOA for some sort of awards for financial excellence, which we've seen and been awarded that in the past. And the community risk assessment, the accreditation element that we're looking at, obviously accreditation is on our timeline here. We're in queue for continuing to try to make that happen. We're a ways out, but we're still striving towards that. CRM and inspections, so we talk about all the things there. I'm trying to get to one specifically. Public safety education, all the work we do to meet the needs of our community for safety education. Public information, strategic communications, section number 7. So this is one that is really important. We spent a lot of time talking about this in our strategic planning session. I don't know if that's the right way to quantify that, but we spent time talking about it. So we're using social media, we're using our website, we use our constant contact, we use YouTube channel, we use our annual report, we use our audit, we use all kinds of tools. But it's kind of like if it's in, if a tree falls in the forest, if no one's there to see it or hear it, doesn't make any noise type of deal. Who watches it, who listens to it, who sees it, things like that. Sure. So our discussion in the strategic planning was that we need to talk about how do we find a method to communicate what we do as a fire district. And I'll turn over to any of you on the board if you want to chime in before I continue on this topic. I know a couple of you had some insights on that. And I'll start, Gene.
I attended a meeting here in Mixer and introduced myself as a member of the board and so on. And a longtime resident, what have you, says, "Oh, what does the board do?" So the question often arises, what do firemen do when they're not fighting fires or they're not responding to this and that? What do they do? And I think that's that would be something that many of our citizens might ask. So we need to tell them what we do. And, you're really good. I mean, I read everything. I'm serious. Your articles in the newspaper, Red Rock News, are well written, informative, and so on. And I think for those of us who take the paper, it's good news. But there are a lot of people who haven't got a clue. And those are the people we kind of need to reach somehow. The question is how.
Yeah, correct.
You're busy. I mean,
Yeah.
everybody's plate's full.
Yeah, and you'll get some of that this afternoon to see all the different things we have going on. And
So the question is how.
so
how do
we
you
don't
do
have a
that?
solution for that, right? So,
Right.
and Dave, you got something you want to add or no?
In relation to that, many fire departments have an actual position for that person who is behind the scenes, maybe not so much in gathering data, but the person who's behind the scenes, the face of the department, and I'm referring to a public information officer, a PIO, or a public service officer, PSO, depending on which one you want to look at it. And they're the ones that answer to the news media, they're the one that answers or is in front of the TV camera, or they're the ones that are on scene, thereby taking some of the time away from the chief to get the message across. So I don't know if, and having been part of the strategic plan, if those duties or responsibilities would fall on an existing officer's shoulder, or maybe it's a position down the road that you might want to look at.
So currently, we use our PIO, our fire marshal is our PIO, our battalion chiefs have some high level, functioning in that capacity, working with the newspapers and the news media when they happen to call or need some help. Are they PIO experts? No, they're not. It's not their only job duty, but highly capable of providing a very cursory or on-scene type report and taking care of some of that stuff. So the PIO part to me, very important and critical in our current environment and ability to not hire an actual body to work here full time. We manage, I think, the PIO part of that as well as we can, more in a reactive mode than a proactive. And this is where I think we're talking about more of a proactive approach.
Right.
So as staff, based upon our findings in the strategic planning session and this specific item, we've added some money in the budget that we're currently looking at to include an outsourced PIO, not PIO, I'm sorry. what's
Public
that?
relations?
Public relations, more or less, information sharing group that can help us get to the people to tell them what we do and how we do it. So kind of media relations, community awareness, and education is kind of the umbrella that I would put that under.
Right.
That can say, hey, listen, let's get an article about what the board does and how they operate. It's wildland season. We should be getting this up and running. I'm looking at your website. This is static and can be focused because, thank you, as good as I am, and so is the rest of the staff, we don't just have this on our forefront. And when we get someone that says, hey, why you got this on next door yet? It's like, yeah, that's a great thing. I would love to do that. But I also have this happen, that happen, and that happen, and I'm going to get to it, or I'll sleep someday. But so I'm suggesting that we include this group that we've talked with. They're on state contract, this Leibowitz Solo group. They do a lot of work. I think you may have seen this in your board packet a little bit. They do a lot of work with fire districts, so they completely understand our fire talk and our fire world and what they need to do to get the message out on how we operate, what we do, as well as the safety components and things like that, kind of encompassing. And they don't have a strong or a steep learning curve, rather. It's going to be fairly quick. When I met with him for the first time, and only time for that matter, he ran down where things are at, what's going on, how things happen, and I was like, how long have you been studying this? He goes, I just did some research last night. And I was like, wow, well, that was pretty impressive because that was spot on and relatable and understandable. And here's some thoughts and ideas what you could be doing. And, are you looking at this? Well, no, I don't have time for that. How about this? Yeah, I didn't think you could do that or whatever. So it's in the budget. We're going to move forward with that. Is the budget approves? We may even look at some of this as getting started a little bit early if there's any funds that we can begin to get the project going, because I think it is important for people to know what we do. We talked about a lot of stuff this morning already. That's high-level, deep stuff that I thought was a good, 3 hours, 3.5 hours this morning.
Are they going to provide a formal proposal? I mean,
Yeah. This
with
was
specifically what they're going to do and
Yeah.
how much it's going to cost.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll get that from them, but, it's in the area that we've budgeted, talking to them, about 20 hours a month or so is what we'd use their services for. And with that, here's what we'll get for them. We'll get that formal proposal, but,
And
that is the
Chief, would they be meeting with various HOA groups or organizational groups to give presentations? Would that be part of what they do?
They would not do that presentation. They might help
Okay.
set that up or say, hey, you're missing an opportunity.
Okay,
One of the things I think is important we should be doing, we should be looking at a citizens academy. They do it at the police department, they do it at the city, so it's been on our radar. We just need to get going. And unfortunately, Chief Bachura leaves, and we can blame everything on him. So, just everything, we were like, hey, we're just getting ahead of the curve, and something happens. It's wildfire season right now, and, our staff is taxed. Like right now, it's not a good time to start a new program this time of the year because there's so much swift water training, wildland fire problems, things like that. So we got to find the right time and the right stuff, but to do it right. And we at Sedona Fire have a big philosophy that we're going to do it right, and not just check a box. And so, we'll be working on the formality of the piece. I just want to make sure you guys are comfortable with the concept. It's to meet this goal, and it's an easy thing that we can take off our plate and have some professionalism, and see where it goes, get the bang for the buck. And there are many fire districts that have a formal PIO staffed position that does community relations and outreach and all those type of things. Maybe the one that goes to the HOA when they're under our umbrella and things like that. I wouldn't send a consultant to go talk to the HOAs. But if they said, we really need to get out to the HOAs, and here's the package, let's put together a program, here you go, and now we go out and do it. That's how I see that's working.
the other, the way the city stays in touch with its public is they send out a nice flyer, no, more like a 4-page, talking about what they've accomplished in the last 6 months. And
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, is that within our capacity to do that, even if it's just annually?
It is. It's within our capacity, certainly. I actually kept the last. We just got something in the mail, more like a newspaper. I saw that one. I don't know. People that live in the city anyway. It looks more like almost like the kudos or something. But it was
This
the
one's
last pages.
sticker. This is card.
This is
card
I know
stock.
you're about a color cardstock when they do that, but then they just did another one, and so I have both of those as samples of things like that we should be looking at considering doing.
Yeah.
And we put together an annual report. How do you take that annual report and get it in front of people and get some value out of it? And so whether it's in a different format, it's a summary piece, an executive summary, there's lots of different ways to go about that. Those are all things that we should be doing, need to be doing, and certainly at the direction of the board saying we really think this is an important feature. That will help us prioritize that accordingly as well.
I think it's very, very important, and it's great that we're going to move forward with this and evaluate the services provided by this group if the group comes on board. At the same time, what have you is that this is marketing, and we're branding this department, this Sedona Fire District. We're branding it so that it becomes. People are familiar with it. They're familiar with the logo. They're familiar with whatever the branding process is. Kind of like any product, Coca-Cola or something you see in the newspaper when you recognize it, and so on. So hopefully that'll be in the future, and to accomplish that.
Our goal, success in my mind, besides the actual teaching of the lessons, but when they see the Sedona Fire District logo, the SFD, they're thinking safe, friendly, dedicated. My firefighters make me safe, they're safe, they're friendly, we're friendly to them, be nice, and they're dedicated, and their dedication to being safe as well. It's a two-way street, so that's exactly what we're trying to accomplish. So I'm flying through some of these things here just to see if there's any other headings. Most of these are going to talk about in the next couple sessions, so I don't want to spend any time really going through all those. I do want to talk about accreditation and ISO, and how do I move right here? So our ISO rating is our rating, and we go through the process. We just did it, so it would be a couple more years till we do another ISO evaluation. Back to Board Member Cooperman's question, or Clerk Cooperman's question about improvements to ISO for people north in the canyon. That we'll see that if we move the station from Slide Rock or to Slide Rock. Do we have improvements to get to a lower ISO? Possibly, but we're a 3 right now. I mean, I'd love to be a 1, but that's probably not practical. And it's a rating. It's not necessarily the be all end all. But the accreditation is really important to me and to our organization, and absolutely to you as board members. If we continue this process, the accreditation is all about continuous improvement process. So constantly looking at our model, constantly making sure we're doing the right things right, and we benchmark ourselves against an international standard. That will help you identify who we are and what we stand for and how we operate. But also, if anyone's got any questions about how we're doing things, we've been benchmarked against, peer agencies across the country, and there's not a lot of them that have gone through this process. It's rigorous, it's intensive, and it's ongoing. The minute we sign up, we're just kind of like, hey, we're interested phase right now. When we get to the next level and say, hey, we're ready, and then the ball starts rolling, and then it's incumbent upon us to maintain that standard, create that constant process of improvement. And I'm excited for this, but it's a lot of work. And so we're working on some policies and procedures and some of the background things to get us ready for the next level. Again, if we had it our way, we'd hire an accreditation person, and that's all they would do for a year or something like that. But when we have everyone doing all the other work, it's kind of catch can.
A quick question for you is, we had a lot of influence on getting the fence put up on Midgley Bridge
Okay.
through the initial letter that went to the powers that be. Currently, there isn't a water supply, a dedicated water supply up the canyon. Water main and hydrants.
Okay.
We may never see it in our lifetime, but in order to affect in a positive way the ISO rating, by getting the process started through a letter to the water people, is that something that would affect our ISO rating if there was a dedicated water supply up there?
Well, yeah. It would enhance the situation for certain. How it would impact, as a sidebar, I won't go too far down the ISO trail, but there's certain things you can do. Like if we had another ladder truck, we'd get a couple more points, or another because we have a reserve ladder truck. We don't have one. We just give up those points. You're never gonna. We don't need a reserve ladder truck.
Right.
So you can start buying points, so to speak, and doing those type of things. So to me, it's all about the service is far more important than what that ISO rating is. So having water up the canyon sounds great. I have no clue what that would actually cost, how it would happen, and you have to realize that where you came from, the LA city was run by the water department in the city, and the planning and all that type of stuff. Here we have, I don't know how many water companies, 27 water companies or something like that, private little entities that all have their own little water thing. And so there may not even be a common denominator that would even run up that way. This one's this company, that one's this company, and they're getting their own water from this well and that well. And so it's not as simple as that.
Yeah.
So I don't think I answered your question, but it sounds great, but that it's not even on the radar for where we could be trying to push today because of the dynamics.
Gotcha.
Can we drop a nugget and say, wow, what's the plan? Yeah, we could do that. And I think John does that on a frequent basis wherever we can find opportunities. But it's not very easy
Gotcha.
at all.
Back to public relations and ISO ratings. And as the average citizens out there, the question might be, why is an ISO rating important to me? And it certainly can be important on a commercial level,
Yes.
insurance. And certainly the ISO rating that given to a department, because departments are really competitive on ISO ratings, whether it's class 1 or class 3 or class 7 or whatever. But to tell the public how ISO is important for their department, it might be something that we want to look at down the future for, again.
Absolutely. And there's places that are a 10 that get to be a 7 and they have a parade.
Right.
That's a big deal. And it is a big deal.
Right.
So it's all kind of relative. And so our goal is at this point, is to maintain a 3. That's really important to me. I don't ever want to go backwards. So that's really important. And certainly looking at all those other tons of nuances. There's public education in there. There's training, and there's all kinds of, the different segments in ISO that are all really important. Each of them have high importance with whatever slice of the pie you're looking at. So we'll continue to look at options, but some of them are just in our structure are not very feasible. And then you take into account the land and the process that would go into it as well. Lexipol, just looking at policies, SOPs, and Lexipol. So we've engaged with Lexipol, and I'll let Jason talk a little bit about that. And Jason, I'm going to leave you a little bit on the accreditation, because if you plan for that, I'll let you talk about it from the operations side more. So it'll tie back to what Jason's going to talk to in both of these two. But we're working really hard to create this new process through Lexipol to be up to date on our policies, have a online access and review policies. There's tons and tons of positive things for us to do to show positive in here. I'm just about done with all these. What is this one here? Data collection analysis. It's a huge piece of our business that we do a great job at, but there's so much room to improve, and maybe it would help us down the road for ISO if we have better data. Certainly is going to be necessary for us to do the accreditation. It's very data driven, and so creating more opportunities through the EPCR program that Ed will talk a little bit about, changing that over, and then just our fire stats and all the different things we do to help track that data, GIS, all that type of stuff. So I think we're almost done here with all the different pieces. That looks like that's it. So the 18 or so sections, something like that we're going through now and looking at. So everyone's got a little more finite piece to look at. Mm-hmm. With this comes a tracking document. So we have a tracking document which aligns with that heading and all the different objectives that are there, with some quarterly objectives. So if you get a red check mark or whatever next, you're not progressing. An orange box is caution. Could be on target or could be or green means you're on target and you're tracking. So we'll be providing a feedback loop for you on kind of how we are. I think quarterly is the most frequent. I said that. I don't want. If we're doing it monthly, you'll never see the progress, and staff doesn't have time to continue to be checking a box. Mm-hmm. So I really want to try to create some points in time where people are going to look at where they're at and having some look back period and go, yeah, I've got this done. I'm in progress on this. I haven't got to that yet, Chief. You gave me 6 more projects. Then it's a red. That's okay. And we aren't going to complete everything in the strategic plan. We just won't. And that's okay. I know that. I hope you understand that. But we're going to continue to get as many of them as we can done in the timeliness that we can do. And we've got this process. So that's our plan as I see it today.
Chief, basically, in the last 2 years, we probably made more reference to a strategic plan in the last, since we got together and formulated this one, than we have in the last 2 years about the previous one. Although you have from time to time mentioned it, we never really had a chance to have a visual progress report, so to speak, as you're speaking of now. So I'm looking forward to that, and again, to thank all the staff for having that brainstorm and getting that whole thing together. Yeah. It looks good.
And I think the challenge that we have with the one that just precedes, or one before this one, is that there were a lot of global thoughts on things, and it was, like I said, let's make the service better. And I can tell you that we absolutely made the service better and did a lot of the things in there, but to quantify them and tangibly say, here's what we did, here's what we did, I can do that if I sat down and really spent a lot of time. Sure. But I know in my heart that we did touch a lot of things in the service and the whole plan, whatever we're trying to accomplish in the old plan. There's a lot of green check marks on that plan, so I'm great with that. This one will provide a little bit more, here's what we did for us, and it'll help be less soft and more concrete. And it helps us, I think, as firefighters and staff to go, here's my steps, I'm doing it, versus, yeah, I got that concept, we're good. And so I'm excited for that to happen as well. Any other questions on the strategic plan or anything? All right, we'll have it for you guys at the next board meeting, I believe, for approval. And I gotta figure out how to get my thing off of this screen now. Oh, probably in here. that, I'm going to try to get this off of here and make some noise. Maybe this will turn it off.
I disconnected my Wi-Fi from it.
Oh, that's what you did. See? That's why we got Heidi here. Disconnect. Boom. You're out of here.
It takes a little while, actually.
Maybe. So I believe Assistant Chief Jason Coyle is up next to talk to you about the operations.
Okay.
And
So, Buzz needs to go home. He is getting much sicker by the moment.
sounds good.
Ed's checked on his desk, wanting to see if he covered in the meantime, so. Buzz doesn't get sick very often either. So, I would like to just go over the
Jason, you
different.
turn your mic on real quick. Sorry.
Sorry about that.
No, it's all right. It's like a rite of passage when you learn how to turn the microphone on.
Longer fingernails.
There we go. Now I know. Yeah. Make sure and keep one for this. So, as y'all are probably aware, we've been in this position for a little bit less than a week, and spent most of that time out on the tinder fire, because the moment that Thursday came around, then that fire started in our incident management team. Remember, they're still there, but I want to come back and talk to y'all. So when I'm talking about the different disciplines, my emphasis is going to be more on what my intent is and what we've already started talking about working together, and not so much on the state of the state. If there's more of that you all desire from me, then I will be happy to get it to you, but I want it to be accurate, and I couldn't do that right now. So I'll just kind of go through everything. So fundamentally, I broke this down is because for those of you who don't know me very well, I got to have a framework. I got to have a process and everything driven it. So I was talking about mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery. So the way I look at it is that in today's fire service, that is what we do. We do it all. It used to be that emergency management would just poke us as the response people, and everybody else would take care of the rest of the stuff. But one thing, we're not very effective at response when we do it that way, because we're not as prepared as we should be. The other thing is that folks need help after the fact, and sometimes there's nobody else but us to help them with that. So with that in mind, if we start with the thing that we're probably that most people most commonly affiliate with fire services is the suppression of just regular fire suppression. So the big part of the first part of that in our mitigation is the work that the crews are doing and coordination with fire marshal about getting new devices and a new program that we're able to do better pre-fire assessments, do better building assessments, and assist the fire marshal. That project's ongoing. I am in the process of coming up to speed on where telecom is on the devices and how that's going to integrate with the new records management system, and what parts of the old record management system we're going to keep. But that will be part of it. And I've met with Ed this morning, and with Michael, and so over the next 6 months of the year, pretty much the focus on the suppression side of it is going to be to make sure that all of the different pieces of training, functionality, expectations align with practice, because we need to go through this whole expo process to update our policies. So before we update policies, we should make sure that the practice is consistent, so somebody doesn't think that, oh, this should be our policy or this should be our policy. And then to make sure that that training that the new firefighters are getting when they come on board aligns with the training that the crews are receiving. It used to be that the way we ventilate a building had a whole different set of terminology than it does right now with slicers and NIST, and so making sure that everybody's has the same mindset about that, about why it's important, because people don't make very good decisions when they don't understand the why behind it. If we just tell them to do something, then conditions change, they don't know. And then making sure that training is consistent and continuous from the day that we onboard somebody until the day they retire, and normalizing that first. There's a ton of different bright ideas out there, especially in structural firefighting, about the different ways to do things. But I'm more concerned right now about us getting a well-validated
and consistent way of doing things. So that pretty much covers the structure fire part of it. I don't know if there's any questions on that. And for those of you in the fire service, the idea of not having congruity in there, I'm sure is nothing new, and probably will probably, I realize, be a constant struggle to be able to get that sort of alignment. So the next discipline to talk about is our swiftwater rescue, and there's a couple key points that I want to hit on that. Number one is that we have adapted our system to where everyone, well, let me back up to what the qualifications are. So everybody in the whole organization that is in response capacity is trained at the operations level of Swiftwater. When new hires come on, we train them at that operations level. And then members of our technical rescue team, which are 15 members, they are all trained at the technician level. So in order to do that, and to do that in the most efficient way possible, those people that become part of the technical rescue team, and this, when I talk about rope rescue, I won't repeat this because the conditions are the same, but they are expected to kind of be the shift trainers. And so because we know that it's costly to do remote training, and because we know that these technicians that have a higher level of expertise, if we utilize an effective process for selecting members of our team, which emphasizes the need to train your peers, then we can use those guys to do the training in-house for the operations level. They're qualified to do that. It works good. And then they have a subject matter expert or multiple subject matter experts on shift with them if something happens. So that's a model over the last couple of years. We've transitioned from having a standalone operations training to an on-duty operations training with just one day every 3 years where they go out in the field to practice that skill set outside of there. The rest of the training is done on duty. Feel comfortable with that because it's something that at that level we do very frequently in Swiftwater and in high-angle rescue, and it's something that there is the depth of expertise there to have that appropriate kind of that safety margin to make sure that people aren't overextending themselves and going beyond the scope of what they've been trained to do. So with Swiftwater, one of the big challenges we get is that the conditions and stuff that we respond to and that people tend to put themselves in harm's way are, they're unfortunately not as infrequent as they used to be, but they're short duration. And planning to train in that environment is pretty difficult because it seems like as soon as those environments exist, we're not training, we're actually out there rescuing people.
Right.
So when I took over the Special Operations Program, the first year we did our training for our technical, or for the Swiftwater training, we went to Durango, Colorado, and trained on the Animas. Prior to that, they'd been training in the Kern River. That year, the Kern River didn't have adequate snowpack, so we looked for someplace close. Durango was close. This year, they're going to the American River near Coloma, California, because there's no water anywhere else. We did, and I'd be happy to share it with you, but it was extensive, about a 15 to 20 page synopsis of all the different training locations, the key criteria to meet those training objectives, consulted with different people, including the Rescue 3 who we are accredited through, to find some place close. But it seems like, and the reason I bring it up is because every few years when we have to do this, because that only happens once every 3 years, but it has become more and more difficult with the changes in the weather in the West to find a good place to train. So as when you look back through a 3-year look at the Swiftwater budget, you'll see that every third year there's a spike. And that spike is because of the cost associated with this training. Try to normalize that spike by balancing out other non-critical budget needs in that budget with needs of other budget to kind of keep that trend from being so significant. But specific to that budget, there most definitely is one. Last year we responded to multiple primary, where we were the primary response agency, and then where we were the secondary response agency, Swiftwater incidents all across the valley. Some of those ended up in fatalities, and our team, I feel like that because of the risk associated with that response, that the amount of time and money that we commit to ensuring people are regular is commensurate with the hazard. And yeah, the high angle rescue, I won't go into the same detail because it's pretty much the same rationale behind it. We do it frequently. Most of those are accomplished by the crew. The same training kind of standard exists. Everybody has that operations level, and then the team has the technician level. There's plenty of times when the rescue is nothing more than just just rolling somebody out on a Stokes basket with a wheel on the bottom of it. And then there's those ones that go beyond that. And we've also adopted that same model where the training that occurs on duty for the operations level people is conducted by the technicians. So that's helped us to reduce costs for maintaining that level of certification.
Jason, in both those cases, the change in that philosophy, is that in the last 5-6 years, the kind of models changed?
Yep, that's correct, Chief. It's ever since I took over, we were trying to, compared the NFPA standard, Rescue 3's training standard, and what we were doing. There was some gaps in the technician level stuff, and so when we were trying to fill those gaps, I was like, well, where else can we save money? How can we gain efficiency so when we fill those gaps, we're not just adding to the cost for delivering that program? And we've transitioned in the last year. Really, we've done it twice on 2 different shifts where that model is completely adopted. Once for Swiftwater and once for.
To benchmark that in dollars, any idea like what the savings realization is?
Well, I said 75 people, even if it's just do 10 hours, so 75 people, 10 hours with roll-ups and everything, $35 an hour every 3 years. So just that 75.
So $25,000.
Yeah. So it's saved $8-9 grand a year because they only have to do that once every 3 years.
Oh, every 3 years. Okay.
Yeah. Well, and the other positive of that on both cases that's the Rescue 3 standards once every 3 years. NFPA has an annual training standard. So on the way we're doing it right now with the on-duty delivery, we also meet the NFPA standard because one of the feedback from the operations people that go to the trainings is that by the time they come around to the 3rd year, if they hadn't been using it very much, they didn't remember it well. The best time to get a rope rescue is the month after people just went through their refresher training. But to avoid that, now we're spreading it out where they get doses of that training and are expected to demonstrate competency multiple times during that 3 years versus just the time that they get recertified.
You mentioned it's problematic in finding places to train Rescue 3, and working with Rescue 3 to find places around the country and what have you. I assume Segerstrom is still heading up Rescue 3 or someone else now. He's getting old, so perhaps.
I'm not certain because Alan Schimberg is the one that talks directly with them. I talk with the lady that's in charge of their certifications. Okay. If there's an issue with one of our instructors, and that's about it.
What I'm thinking is, locations and so on and so forth. I've been out of it so long, what have you, but we used Magic Mountain, Six Flags, and so forth, and those kind of venues are in the West. But I don't know if they do that anymore.
I don't know, but I've never. I mean, I scoured USGS data, and I never once thought about asking an amusement park or something like that. But I
they have. That's where we train.
Should do all of ours at Great America as well.
Yeah, they have a river that keeps going around and around and around, what have you, with weirs that we call rapids. And it sounds silly, but we trained sheriffs and firefighters and so on at Six Flags there in Magic Mountain. But again, I don't know if that's possible, contract, liability, on and on and on. So
I don't either, but we could certainly find out and just determine if it warrants further analysis. So
You just want to be careful if you see a purchase order now for Magic Mountain that we don't have, it'd be great question it because your checks and balances we talked about this morning, but understand it's
an e-ticket ride.
Yeah.
there you go.
a fast pass.
Chief, are we part of a bigger picture regionally? In other words, is Arizona, Nevada, California? Is that kind of like how it's structured on a bigger scale?
With the technical rescue, we are definitely part of a regional response, and we've worked really hard through the fact that we maintain the instructors to allow the other agencies that we respond with to get their training at a reduced cost. Somebody could say that we should charge them the same thing we would charge anybody else. My rationale is that we need them to make good decisions when they respond to keep our people safe, and as long as we're not losing money on allowing the people that respond with us to receive the training, we're increasing our ability to affect change in the emergency situation, and that to me is that aligns with our intent. Yeah. And so, but there's some consortiums that exist. As a matter of fact, ask for Engineer Schimberg to look for some outside training opportunities, because we have periodically, and he recognized this as well, we train so much within the sphere of influence. It pretty much goes from Phoenix up to here, maybe to Flagstaff, and then over to Prescott, that sometimes it's good to poke your head out and make sure that we're doing things that align with later center. And we get some of that from Rescue 3, but not a lot in the region.
The reason why I ask is in line with what Board Member McCarthy mentioned, is that water management companies often have large waterways going through with slant wall, concrete, which would make an ideal sterile training environment as an example. So that may be something to look at also.
I agree. And, you know, it's interesting because the reason Durango built a water park, and it was, you know, when I looked at the things that I liked about it, number one, it was close to a good trauma facility. There's deliberately, they made places to eddy out to where you could, you know, backwater points beneath each one of the obstacles. And the obstacles were in a relatively compressed space.
Right.
So, you know, so some of that stuff about where things have been, and it's true, it's the Animas River, but they created those obstacles. They have whitewater events and stuff there, but it certainly reduces the risk and the complexity when you deal with things like that.
Right. So the other part that we do is when they go out, at least in the past, they camp for a couple days. So that there's a crossover training, so they get so many people to the training, and then they meet crossing shifts, whatever, and then so there's the efficiencies. And just hearing Jason talk about the need for having a trauma center nearby, and that's the level of the complexity of things we're looking at. It's not just, well, let's go down because I can turn the water up on the creek up here or something, and we can go float down it on a inner tube and call it swift water. Check a box.
That's right.
You know, that's the stuff we don't do. We can't just go, hey, let's go hang from the rafter in the bay and we'll call it high angle. It might meet the criteria of being on a rope and effecting a rescue. But then we go out to the real world and we try to effect a rescue. Well, where's the rafter I have to tie to, or, you know, whatever type of thing. So we really work very hard to have that practical, economical, safe, all that stuff gets rolled up into one. Those are the type of things that Jason does and his team does, whoever's heading up, Alan Schimberg's and Todd Miranda helping out Wildland will talk about, things like that.
Yeah.
Everyone's thinking at the high level stuff, and that's, as a fire chief, impressive to me to have folks operating at that level in that arena. So.
Yeah, and it is one of the things that increases the cost. We could, with our number of people, we could do that SRTA and SRTB. We could do that just once every 3 years. But then we have every one of our technicians in a remote location, and so what we've chosen to do is we increase the instructor cost a little bit because our instructors stay for 2 iterations, but we do each one of them, and then we allow 1 day in between for travel so people can come back and then go there. And so we always have we always have technicians on duty here in the event that something is to occur. Because you know, the Swiftwater stuff's so hard to plan around here because it's just one big dump away
It's
from
feast and famine.
from something happening. So. The other component of our special operations program, SOL and Fire, is our helicopter rescue program. And so what that consists of is that there is 2 personnel per shift that are trained with DPS quarterly to recertify as helicopter rescue technicians. And you know, the benefit of that on rescues is, I'm sure you guys have seen it multiple times, just because it garners a lot of media interest when it happens. But the other benefit is that we operate in and around these helicopters frequently, and all the members of the helicopter rescue team have been trained in proper ingress and egress, either hover egress or when the helicopter's under power, towing 1 skids, those kind of things. And so they're able to ensure that training, or that level of safety is maintained by the other members. And then they coordinate once a year with DPS once every 3 years, and we offer that training to the rest of the personnel, just short about how to get in and out of the helicopter under power. And it sounds kind of easy, but you know, there's certainly, you can create problems, and it's important for everybody to know that during the height of a rescue, and the location of the blades relative to the amount of clearance you have and everything changes, and unfortunately, you know, we know that all too well. So you know, that's our helicopter rescue team. They also, another great benefit of them is because they're intimately familiar with DPS's standards. Yes, the final decision always goes to the pilot, whether it's a go or no go. but they can and are encouraged to consult with the IC about a rescue and say, hey, this is the risk right now. Hey, the gust spread is 15 miles an hour. If that gust spread goes up 5 more miles, they're going to wave off for sure. Those are kind of hazards. So they're able to provide a kind of a higher level analysis of those situations when we're using aircraft, and I think that benefits us as well. So, wildland fire. So there is no, by the way, for the rescue, the helicopter rescue, it's important to know what standard we kind of anchor into. That standard is set by DPS. It aligns with best practice, and when it comes to the safety margins and stuff for ropes and helicopters is different, but we follow that as well, which is, I think I can't remember who said that. It's not an NFPA, but it's a 5-to-1 safety margin versus a 10-to-1 like on ground-based rescue. So the wildland fire part, all of our firefighters, all operational personnel, are trained to at least be what they call a FFT2 under the NWCG system. So everybody is the term we use is red carded. They all have PPE that meets the NFPA and the NWCG standards, and they've all been trained. And so, ever since I've been here, that has just been a part of what a firefighter is here, because of the threat to the community, and it's shown dividends. Outside of that, there's other people that are trained up to higher levels. Todd Miranda, who's a firefighter and has also spent a number of years working for the Forest Service on both the hotshot crew and in the helitack crew. He has taken over in the day-to-day management of the wildland program, and it's been a good opportunity for him. He's actually listed on the captain's list right now, but been able to start bringing him up to speed on how the budgeting stuff works, looking at ways we can change things in a budget to kind of normalize it out over years but still meet the needs of the program, looking for better ways to offer training. And ever since, well, at least the last 10 years and maybe further back than that, but the wildland program has paid for itself through the revenue that we gain from sending people out, which is great. It's great to have that opportunity to be able to do that. But in my mind, the real reason that is an important part of it is because there's so much different complexity and different inputs to that complexity on every event and every incident. And I like it that we have a lot of guys that have seen changes in that, whether the brush is going to burn that day or isn't going to burn that day, and whether it's, what's that wind look, hey, what happens at thunder cell, those things aren't just things they've learned in a book, it's things they've experienced in other areas. And so when it comes to the bad day in Sedona, like we've had on the Brins, the La Barranca, and Slide, that those folks are ready to balance the need to evacuate a whole bunch of people with the need to try to keep that fire from entering that area that they're evacuating people into. What's an appropriate level of response? When do we stop fighting fire and just worry about getting people the heck out of the way? When can we put more emphasis into fighting fire? Because all those decisions at that time need to be made in a very short period of time. And I feel like this is the model that we've adopted is the best way to maintain and increase that level of decision making. Any questions on the? You guys heard me talk about the wildland program, so I was just going to.
I had one question with
Yes, sir.
regard back up to the helicopters. Is there an MOU with the Department of Public Safety or?
I don't know that we have a formal MOU.
Either.
Mutual aid agreement?
Yeah,
MOU.
I could find out though. Mr. McCarthy, get back with you.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. I'm not sure. I've been doing it for
I
a
know.
long time, so I don't know what the original agreement was or how that became that we were
Well,
doing
of course, memorandums of understanding help to resolve, interdepartmental problems, what have you, should they come up.
that. Yeah.
And so I'm just curious.
So one of the things I just want to comment on that Jason spent a lot of time talking about is the importance of training. And while we didn't illustrate you with cool videos and pictures of the stuff that we're doing, but the situations we find ourselves in, the firefighter who's got 1 year on the job, 3 years on the job, 8 years on the job, 18 years on the job, is out there making critical decisions for their health and wellness, the health and wellness of the people that are on their team and the people we're there to serve and rescue. And when we just got done talking about budgets and talking about, where do you find money to cut? Where do you do things? A lot of places will look at prevention and training as two other places to cut. And those are critical places that you really can't afford to cut. These are high-risk, high-reward environments, and the amount of work and effort that goes into our folks getting this training is critical. The other part is that this training, we do as much of it on duty as we can. The hard part is when we do it on duty, and when you're in the middle of stuff, either you have a longer turnout time, which is that's an acceptable cost benefit piece. Of course, if you're the one calling for the services and you've got the long turnout time because we're have hose out on the ground and we're doing stuff, but that's a business normal. But we can't do it 24/7. We do a lot of training off duty so that we have crew continuity or that there's content continuity, which creates overtime. So I'm trying to say you can't have everything. I think we'd love to do a lot more training if we could do it, but we've scaled it down. We work it. It's practical. It's right. It's the right number. It's safe. We're meeting the benchmarks and doing the right things right. But understand that comes with cost and time and all those other things that sometimes we don't forget. But listen to Jason speak. I don't want to miss that opportunity for you to think about, wow, why is the overtime budget here? And this is what we would, if there's a training overtime budget, and that's covering when people are gone on training, or mandatory, that's sick and training, and then there's the training overtime budget, or we call it, I think it's training now is what it's in the budget now.
Training and readiness overtime.
Training, and so that's when we're sending people off shift to do some of this training. So you look at those two items in the budget, you'll see that line item, and that's what those two differences are. One is covering the shifts, and one is paying for people that are training off duty. So if you see those two numbers, that's what they are, and a lot of what Jason spoke to, as well as firefighting training and things like that. So,
Along those lines, I was trying to kind of coalesce a couple statements around an idea of like what it was I was looking for as we move through the development of these different programs, because I think that the statistics and the data and everything that we're driving, I'm excited to look at some different ways that we can use those, and I think there are some ways that we can apply what we already have as far as tools in a more effective manner. But at the end of the day, what I put is just incident level decision making. We need to be able to have an overall plan and strategy that describes the management actions and how we achieve our objectives. I mean, that's something that every one of these programs should certainly have. We need to be able to identify the organizational priorities, and that should be the anchor right there. Is if the organization says this, if you all say, Swiftwater is important because we have this many Swiftwater rescues a year. Hazmat's important. Maybe not so much, but we still need awareness, especially about carbon monoxide, about certain things. So maybe we want 4 gas monitors where we can do that level of kind of more domestic hazmat, if you would. But we don't have rail. We don't have an interstate that runs through us. And we have other agencies in close proximity to us that have robust hazmat chains. So maybe the spending on hazmat, in my personal view, this is the way it should be, doesn't elevate itself to a technician level team because there's those other expertise, and because of our, like I said, we don't have rail, we don't have an interstate going through our district. There's other people that can handle that. Whereas the technical rescue stuff, that's kind of us. We have a lot of pretty red rocks people like to climb up and fall off. So then compare that perception back to what you said about the community and their. So is the perception of the risk that we have, is it accurate? Number one, and I think the statistics will help us get there. And then number two, is that after we validate that perception is accurate, does the community share that perception? I don't know, but certainly we'll find out. And then after we do that, then we define and execute what we need to accomplish to meet the objective, and then we make that the focal point of our actions. So I feel like as we go through the different training things, as long as we, and I like a system, I like a matrix. So as long as we have some methodology behind this, then I think it helps us to avoid where we're having just intuitive decision making that may not necessarily, it's not very defensible, and it may not guide us the right way. So that was kind of the process I was put through as I was looking at these. And I talked about hazmat and the why there, and there are 2 others, kind of smaller programs that I just wanted to hit on real quick is our drone program. So our small UAS. Mark Howard is definitely our subject matter expert there. That is one thing in every one of these programs. We have people that, regardless of rank, have come to us with some awesome expertise. Mark is a commercial helicopter pilot, and he's working on his commercial helicopter pilot's trainer certification. So he has to know the rules. So it's really good. So he keeps the rest of us honest. And right now we have 2 platforms, 2 small platforms. but we're continuing to work to get more people qualified to this Part 107, to the standard that the FAA says that we're supposed to follow, just to make sure that we're doing everything right, because we have busy airspace. And then, to kind of put an example to that idea of the process, right now, one of the things that we're looking at, and I have some of the initial numbers back, is the cost that we spent in the past on our confined space and our and our trench rescue, is that cost commensurate with value to the organization? I won't have a solid answer in a position to present to Chief Kazian until after we get done with this accreditation process, because I want to make sure that as we go through their model of defining standards of cover and everything for the different disciplines, that I apply that model objectively to this as well. But that's a big question of mine, because the only confined space we really have is at the sewer treatment facility for the city. Is the city dependent upon us for confined space response? I don't know. I know we don't have any formal agreement that anybody could find, and so what is the consequence for the city if we choose not to have that? What do we gain in training hours that we could commit somewhere else? What equipment are we maintaining that we use infrequently, and what's the trade-off in other training or expertise that maybe we should have that we would use more frequently? I don't really know the answer to all those yet, but that's something that we're continuing to look at, and will be part of this deeper dive as we work on the policies and accreditation.
Certainly, structural collapses in there, and trench rescue we talked about yesterday at the fire chiefs meeting. And so there's all these, those are all specialties that we're going to be called upon to mitigate or help or try to figure out. And that's the challenge, is how proficient we need to be.
Aren't some of those specialties routed out around the Verde Valley, though? Like you said, isn't Camp Verde kind of our hazmat? We've got technical rescue. I always kind of thought that the specialties were part of it. I'm not sure what.
Yeah.
I guess I thought trench rescue was Cottonwood, but
Yeah, well, I think it was at one point, and then it went to Verde Valley, and so our meeting yesterday at the Chiefs was, is it still viable? Do we need to do it? And so we're just having that discussion. But there's just a lot of technical pieces, and again, back to the overall picture. When something bad happens, they call us, and we have to solve the problem. And the days of just, hey, well, we'll go in there and hook drop a guy in there, and we'll hopefully not hurt anybody, and measure our day by, as long as we didn't kill anybody, it was a good day, really aren't acceptable in today's litigious society. Our expectations for safety of our people, the training and equipment we have to have, and all that stuff. It's if you go back to the Iowa days and what you did, back in 1990 or whatever that was, late 80s, it was just kind of maybe even sort of beginning. It's completely different with standards, expectations, lawsuits, and proficiencies we have to have. And
I'm lucky to be alive. There's no question.
so
We just did, I don't know if it qualified as a trench rescue, but when the lady fell into a crevice that had to be pulled out of.
yeah, definitely not trench rescue
Okay.
in that capacity.
Okay.
Nor a confined space requirement either. Well, I suppose it-
Trench is more about shoring. The big thing about trench is preventing something to continue to collapse on you.
Subterranean,
Oh,
typically,
Yeah.
the trenches relate
Yeah.
to
Okay.
subterranean activity.
Getting cats out of the sewer.
Yeah. So, but yeah, but in that case, she was in a crevice,
Yes.
which could even be a whole different set of technical rescue inside of the rope rescue piece. There's cavernous rescue, and there's all kinds of different mountain rescue. It's there's all kinds of specialties within it. But anyway, our risks are great and all across the board. And Jason's comment that systems oriented and strategic minded and focused is certainly his specialty, and no doubt that we will have a good guy taking a look at the systems and programs and continuing on where Jeff left off and where he's been working anyway in that arena in his previous position quite effectively. So it's neat to just listen to and share with you a little bit of all the things we do from that side of the business. We'll get to EMS here in a minute. It's just we're busy. Heidi's going to talk about the admin staff and what we're doing there. So it's not for a lack of looking for something to do around this place, that's for sure.
A question for Chief Coyle and Chief, when we have you, with regard to hazmat.
Yes, sir.
179 leading into Sedona and so on and so forth, and then of course, 260 and in and so on. Tanker trucks, we don't have rail, so on. We certainly have 1202 tankers.
Oh, yeah.
And the issue is overturning into a riparian area and so on and so forth, and the environmental issues and the anticipating what that may incur as far as staff and time and reporting and so on that goes into the federal level.
And-
So I'm sure those are all addressed. You know, you've looked into all that stuff and so on and so forth. But again, it's a question that the average person out here in the neighborhood, they haven't got a clue.
No, and as a matter of fact, you know, it was just last year, right, that they, with the,
Down here.
yeah, with the tar rollover, it had, I'm not sure what, I don't know what it's placarded
Emulsifier
as,
or
but it was some sort of emulsified asphalt. It moved pretty quick once it hit the ground, and the tanker rolled over, and the crews were able to dike and contain the spill and prevent it from getting into the watershed.
Right.
And you're right. I think that, and that is, so, you know, what do you, that's back to the accreditation. That's I think an important part of it, because that is something we have. You know, we have a unique scenic waterway that runs through. Maybe we do operations level hazmat, but we're also bump it up when it comes to containment, and we make sure that people have the right containment, that they have portable diking material, that they know how to use our hoses as diking material, whatever those things are, because you know, you're right. We have two main roads to go through, and busy roads and narrow roads in some places, and that hazard still exists.
So I got to get a hold of the local hay dealer and get some bales in and so on and so forth.
Yeah. Well, you know, the last one of the things that I'll touch on, then I'll give it to Ed, but is the you know, when we're talking about the response to an active shooter event. You know, there's multiple different levels of response that can occur, from us having sworn post-certified members of our agency that also respond with DPS to, or with whichever special operations unit responds, to us, you know, waiting in the cold zone for the whomever is beyond the barricade to bring us the patients. You know, we ended up, where we landed on was some middle ground. And not like I say that always compromise in the middle makes sense. Some things that make more sense to drop them off the plate, and other ones be really robust. But in this case, is that we are, you're working under this rescue task force model, and part of the benefit is, because there's so many different things to train and learn on, is we can build onto our ability to handle mass casualty incidents with kind of a specialized piece of it on how we handle things beyond the barricade and how we coordinate with the police there. And so we can leverage the knowledge that we already have in one type of a program, of an EMS major medical kind of an event, and just add a new skill set to deal with, you know, this other part of it, versus building a whole new model. But yeah, I do worry sometimes about when we become the jack of all trades and the master of none kind of thing, and it's tough. But fortunately, we have a lot of people that are willing to specialize in different areas and to maintain that higher level of expertise, and I think that keeps us all kind of where we need to be. So it certainly deserves constant reassessment.
So, any questions at all on the operations? We didn't really get into, you know, staffing and stations and response stuff, but I think you guys got a lot of that. We talk about that often. I think our stations are located in the right places at this time, barring any future growth in different areas that may make different discussions. I think we're fairly well suited. We'll continue to look at our staffing model, and is there opportunities for any other efficiencies as they relate to staffing in the operations side of the house? We will look at, and any other parts and pieces that go with that. You know, our turnout time, or our response time, the 90 percentile piece. You know, watching that and how it can affect those operations. Or MDT projects, which, you know, may get in touch a little bit with what Bob's going to, you know, talk about, that we're working on. But there's all kinds of stuff we're doing to help make all that happen. And when Jeff left and he gave us a here's my project list, and here's who's doing it, and here's all, it's eight pages long, and
Yeah.
not big font. It's
it's
a 10 font, 8 pages long, of all the different things, you know, that are going on in the organization. And I don't know that a ton of them are voluntary, like, hey, we're just taking us on because we're bored. It's stuff that we got to keep up with or do, or we've started, we want to finish, and things like that. So Jason's got a lot of work to wrangle those cats and figure out the priorities and get things moving. And he's also a systems guy. He's a bit of a taskmaster as well, so he'll be checking things off and getting them done with no doubt. So look forward to you coming on board and jumping in the role. And so he's going to be here for next couple months in an interim role, and then we'll get a time in the schedule to free up, and we'll offer up a test and see how the candidates do, and the best person will get the role, and he'll get an opportunity to see if it's really what he wants to do as a candidate or not. So we're excited to have Jason on board. So thanks, Jason.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
So we've got Ed here next to talk a little bit about EMS.
I didn't do a PowerPoint. Sorry, I know you guys big fans of PowerPoint. Members of the board, chair, as you know, I'm Ed Mazulis, and I just want to do a brief overview and Q of A of our EMS operations. Currently, we staff, just as an overview, 5 engines throughout the district that are all ALS all the time, and then we staff 4 ambulances ALS all the time. In addition to that, we've got 3 in reserve status for downtime maintenance, etc. So that we have those in play. Our call volume specific to EMS is plus or minus 100, right around 3,000 calls a year is dedicated to EMS response. And of those calls, we do primary EMS and transport, and then we do unscheduled interfacility transports for the local hospital system. And speaking of interfacilities, we've worked with Northern Arizona Healthcare quite a bit to modify some of our practices, and leading into some of our partnerships. I'll first discuss interfacilities. We've worked a lot with our medical director, who's with NAH, to tune our destination for a lot of our patients. You know, we're giving our medics a lot more freedom to determine destination based on what they see on scene. And whether it's anecdotal or real, in 2015 we had 912 interfacilities, and in 17 we dropped that by about 30%. And I think it has a lot to do with our destination changes and giving our medics more flexibility. So that partnership's alive and well. We do an annual review and update to our protocols, and Dr. Schenk allows us to provide a lot of input to those changes, and he's very trusting of our services, and that's on the backs of our guys proving themselves day in and day out being solid medics. Some other partnerships we have with local Northern Arizona Healthcare is we have a stroke alert protocol, which I think is huge for our community, because if we see the signs and symptoms of stroke, it expedites them getting to the robot doc or a remote doc that they wheel in a robot to the room and help determine what's going on, and it expedites their CT and then whether or not what treatment they receive. So that's a huge deal for us. We initiated some sepsis alert protocols that expedited a lot of our population that's sick to get them in and get them the assistance they need. We also, I can't remember when we didn't do it now, but we've established a solid relationship with the cardiology group. So our medics, just based on their assessment on seeing the cardiology group, will activate their cath lab, and we'll go direct to the cath lab. And when it first started, they wanted to see a 12 lead, and they wanted to talk about it, and they wanted to think about it. And now, without any of that, if we say launch, they'll staff their cath lab. So that's great for our community. In addition to that, we've done some advanced training with our medics, and they now monitor chest tubes for interfacility transports. So if a physician places it, we can monitor the devices used for chest tubes, and that affords us the opportunity to get care quicker for folks. And wasn't the unintended benefit to our citizens is those patients all had to be flown before, and so to take a ground ambulance up reduces their cost substantially. And it matters not to the fire district if you're talking dollars and cents, but if we're really here for our customers and our patients, and if you can cut off a flight bill down to a ground transport bill, that's a huge deal in my mind. In addition to that, we've trained our medics with the use of IV pumps, so we can transport a lot more meds now than we could before, up to and including insulin, which was kind of scary to me personally. And once we went to the training, I realized our medics have done great with it. So that's kind of an overview of our full ALS, ACLS service that we provide to the community, and some of the specific programs we partnered with NIH to enhance the level of care we provide here rurally. And statewide, we've got our fingers in a lot of stuff. I sit on the DHS State EMS Committee, training committee, where we help program and develop a lot of the training that's going to roll out to the state for the year. We've got Josh Wells and John King, two medics. One's a captain, one's a firefighter, and they're heavily involved with Dr. Bob Rowe and the CPR University down at U of A, and they help teach. Bring in students from locations all around the world, and they just geek out on CPR and research. And the bring back for us has been a lot of enhancement to our CPR response. And then with the wildland environment, with our EMS integration, and again going back to Todd and firefighter Sean Foster and engineer Mike Pace, they've worked hard to kind of develop the model for fireline medical providers in the country. And we send out line medics, and we just had Central Arizona Fire here a couple weeks ago looking at our equipment because they want to model our program, and so that's happening all over. So those are kind of some big deal things that keep our folks safer. Community paramedicine.
Yeah, real quick, before I go to community paramedicine. So I think Ed mentioned something that's kind of an interesting piece. So if you caught the interfacilities, was 900 and something, and we've cut it by 30%, so we're at 600 and some calls for interfacility. So from a financial brain in my head going, wow, we have 300 less transports we were doing. That's 300 more calls we would have had on top of those calls for service that we would have seen. So we did 4,500 calls last year. We would have been at 48. But because of the ability to work with the hospital and create where we can essentially transport from the village, was probably a good chunk of this was from the village going right to VVMC, created not only less downtime. So at 300 calls we were out of service for doing interfacility transports, which in many cases were non-emergency transports. Makes some reliability, higher reliability for our organization. It creates less in revenue, right? But most importantly to me, well, important that we have the reliability, that's really high, is also that those people that are, the cost of being transported once, to be picked up and transported again, getting to definitive care where they need to go, things like that. So I think we've elevated our level of care, our quality of service to the person, getting one stop instead of two. Bills, got less of a bill. So a lot of those are a lot of times probably were residents that were getting the double trip. And so there's just a win-win-win, except for our budget being 300 interfacilities less, which is a significant number. I don't know what it is exactly, but it's a number that's I don't know if it quite has seven or six numbers in it, but it's probably pushing that. So it's I'm guessing $80,000-$90,000 of revenue from our budget that we're not getting. But if we can plan for that and have less transports, it's better for us. And I don't know what we'd be talking about today if we had 300 more calls and growing, if you will, because our call volume is going up. We'd be having more problems, having additional staffing needs, things like that. So kudos to Ed in the EMS world and the doctors and everyone to again, find a better solution to delivery of the system. And so I just want to make sure we point out before we move on to CIP. Yeah. Any questions on that from you guys' perspective?
I got a question. Is the call load for our ALS rescues such that we should look at an EMT or a BLS rescue to take the low-level calls, thereby reducing the call load for the ALS units, but maintaining or even maybe even increasing the overall call load?
We've looked at it specific to our. I'll use the village as an example. I'd never want to downgrade that engine to BLS because they're regularly, having back-to-back calls, so they would delay the ALS response in the village. Specific to our ambulances, we've looked at a BLS rig, and we've looked at a few other things, and you're depending on the dispatch and to determine kind of what's going on with the call, and then when you get there, it's usually not what you were dispatched for. And so looking at the placement of a BLS rig, the cost savings didn't make sense compared to, so you put it at Station 4, and that BLS rig goes out to the village, and then it turns out to be an ALS call, and then we got to drop the medic off the engine, which may be the captain, and then now we have a two-person engine in the village with no captain. And so if you played this scenario out with our, and a lot of it has to do with our geography. If you played this scenario out with 15 different calls, 5 of them, it would be a better model. But with the dynamic nature of our call volume and the geography, if you upstaffed engines and made all the ambulances BLS and then dropped engine stuff, I mean, you could get crazy wild with it, but there'd be costs associated. There's a million ways to do it, but I just don't think with our call volume and how the system works right now, a BLS ambulance would benefit us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Definitely a model we've been looking at, and we watch plenty of our counterparts around the state are trying different models. So I think at one point you talked about doing a smart car or something like that. You asked about Clark Cooperman. So we're about to talk about community paramedicine, so this will dovetail right into that. But our call volume is not that great, and the distances that we need to travel to get people to those. And Sedona's right here at Medical Center, but the volume's not there to make as much of an impact as you want. I'm not saying we won't ever come to you one day and say, hey, we got a model that's been tried and true, but I don't know that we're at the point where we feel there's a model that, hey, we could present to you that we think is really going to be cost effective. Might be interesting. Probably don't feel like it's going to be cost effective, and I don't know that it'll be beneficial to service. Versus a big system, where you're running. I mean, the city of Phoenix only has, I just heard the other day, 22 ambulances or something like that. In the entire city of Phoenix, it's a small number, but their engines go package the patients up. All they do is they pull up, they kind of go, here's your patient, and they drive 4 minutes to the nearest hospital, do the paperwork, and then they're ready. And the next call is 3 blocks away, and they can transport 8 people probably in the time we do 2, or whatever. I mean, it's a completely different model. So those make it easy to say, hey, we could have a low acuity, we call it a low acuity model, where you can say, hey, you got a bloody nose, you got a cut finger, you got a rolled ankle. We'll get you someone, they'll be there, versus I have a heart attack and things like that. Our models just doesn't.
And that's the thing, is having medic units available is critical, because the most basic BLS call from the village takes an ambulance out of service for 2 hours minimum.
So is that to say that, do we ever utilize the private ambulance when a call is of that level?
We do, and I don't have those numbers, but more regularly, we've had them come up as move-up staffing, and in addition to that, we've had them, if depending on the complexity of the day or what calls are going on, we have an agreement with Kim Moore, Chief Moore down in Verde Valley, and we call and say, hey, you have one available. Yes, okay, we have an inter-facility, can you take it? And I wouldn't say it's happening more regularly, but maybe just because I'm paying more attention to it, but it's a more regular occurrence than it was, just because the nature of our calls.
I have a question. It may have been more than a year ago or so, but I recall you reporting that the distances that we had to take people had really increased because we had overcrowding locally, and they couldn't accept folks. Has that settled out? Are they functioning better in terms of capacity?
If I could capture in 20 minutes the complexity of NAH's system, I would be a millionaire. There was a flu season. There was a season when we had snowbirds. And it doesn't seem to be a season anymore. And then the hospital makes one structural change to how they label a floor and turn it from a OBS floor to a tele floor to an ICU. It changes our call volume here at Sedona Fire. And so they changed one thing at Sedona Emergency Center about how they care for people, or the CT goes down for one day, it changes our call volume. So they were definitely filling up this winter, and it seems to be waning. But the season used to kind of be predictably November to March, and now it seems to be September through May. And so I don't know what I don't know.
Yeah,
And
floor, it's a nursing shortage, is probably more they're filling up. They're filling up because they only could take so many patients. The hospital didn't have every bed full. They had floors that were empty, but they didn't have nurses to work the floor. So, again, all those complexities, right, that are in there. I'm sure Ty's shaking his head. He understands how, and seeing those changes in your business as well, how that makes a difference. So, we're also victim to external controls that, like a flu season, we have nothing to do with that, and that will severely impact our ability to provide service. Or the CAT scan's down for 3 days, and we're taking everyone to Phoenix now all of a sudden, or whatever. Or the one specialist that's in town is on vacation this week, so they're not admitting anyone with that type of. They got to go somewhere else.
And it's fluid. Monday through Thursday, you can take a hand injury to Cottonwood, but you can't on Saturday, so you have to take them to Flagstaff because the ortho's not on, because they only have one right now. They don't, but I mean, that's been a case. It's just there's so many different variables to it that where a lot of our service delivery depends on the state of NAH a lot of times.
But in terms of trend, I guess,
It's like
are
AFib.
transport miles decreasing or increasing?
No, our trend is like AFib. It's regularly irregular.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
Our overall miles are definitely, I would predict are not decreasing at all.
no.
Not at all. We seem to have not been going to Phoenix as much. There was a period of time when we were in Phoenix.
Exactly.
Like every tour, we were gone to Phoenix once, at least.
I think that's when you were reporting about it. Yeah.
So in that way, our miles may be down somewhat, but it's not going to be extraordinary. But we seem to be going there less. But it's
We're doing more with Flagstaff, and I didn't pull those numbers specific. I think year to date we've had 11 Phoenix transports, 216 total year to date in 18. So we're staying on track. But yes, sir.
I guess just an observation. As you guys, most of you folks know, I came from a very large organization, and my observations so far of the EMS system here in Sedona is absolutely amazing.
Well, thank you.
You guys are amazing and what have you, and how you've evolved over the years and added skill sets that in years past were unthinkable. And
Just wait.
obviously with personnel who had the ability to absorb and learn and provide, and my hat's off to them. And the thing is with EMS, it will continue to change and be complex. It's complex now. You wait 10 years from now, how complex it will be as far as delivery system, patient care, and so on. So, and the hospitals are all part of that. We had hospitals in our area, what have you, that are closed. They're just closed, and so you had to go 10 miles farther or even further, and that closed, and it messes up the whole system.
No, absolutely.
So anyway, my hat's off to you. Thank you.
And I appreciate it. And that's our goal, is to build a system that will provide effective EMS care to our community without interruption from outside pressures or changes, to stay fluid. So touching on community paramedicine, Eric Walter, our community risk management specialist, who's been doing a lot of stuff that John will touch on with community risk, but specific to CIP, he's had 52 referrals so far this year in the first 4 months of the year, and that's well over what I had all of last year. He's got 9 active patients right now, and hours of anecdotal stories of success that aren't measurable. If you want to pull Gabe in and say measure this, he couldn't measure the benefits of the program, but the smiles on the faces of our customers and our patients is measurable. Last month we initiated so right now all the referrals come through NAH, and last month we initiated a crew referral system, whereas the crew responds to the home once or multiple times. Just we set some criteria, and if the crew feels that a local citizen doesn't have what we think are the appropriate resources, they have a mechanism to refer that person to Eric, and then he'll go out and cold call them and schedule an appointment to see where we can align the resources. And the first month he had 5 crew referrals and some good outcomes with that too. So is it successful? In my mind, it is. But what does successful mean? I mean, does 100 patients a month dub it successful? No, it dubs it unsustainable. We currently are still working with the hospital. There's been discussions about some grant funding, and NAH again restructured their administrative staff, and so they're working through some things with that, and they're working through some alignment pieces with how they're going to do stuff with medical control, and it kind of got hung up in NAH legal. Nothing derogatory or negative towards our organization, but the hospital system has some different pieces that they have to put in play, and I would argue they're not as nimble as we are when it comes to change. But it's going really well. Eric's having really good outcomes, and it's afforded him the opportunity to get out in our public and help some folks. In addition to that, moving forward into this year, we've been waiting for the dust to settle with the local school district, and because we want to engage them. There's a mandate now, a state mandate, that you have to have CPR cert to graduate high school. And so we're going to reach out, and instead of helping them with their program, we're going to present them with their program and tell them we're going to help them with it. And because they don't have to be full American Heart Association certified, but they have to have a program. So as one of our pub ed pieces for this year, we're going to reach out to the schools and make sure we develop a program with them that gets all their students through CPR before they graduate. So that's something Eric's working on. We're starting a CPR, coming out of the stuff I touched on earlier with CPR University and our guys involved. They're just bringing back tons of data. And another thing Eric's working on is the new mandate from AHA is your mannequins have to provide you biofeedback. It's just not the old click on the chest mannequins. There has to be some sort of mechanism to measure depth and rate. And so we've got those, and it's an app on your phone. And throughout the summer and into the fall, we're going to capture local events, and it's kind of a shotgun approach where we'll show up with a couple mannequins, and we've made some cards cheap off Vistaprint, and we'll challenge people at whatever event it is to see who's better at CPR. And just the data has shown that if citizens know CPR, they're comfortable starting CPR, and it increases the positive outcomes for the patients we then respond to. So that's some of the pub ed stuff Eric's working actively on. So collectively, I think it's going really well. With that CPR lead-in, with our Zoll monitors and the Zoll data tracking, we've now got, for 2018, 100% QA review of our codes, where our crews, by their next tour, get a printout and a meeting with John or I, and we ask them how they did on their code, and then we actually show them how they did on their code, and they see the rate and depth of their compressions. They see how long they were off the chest to do tubes or IVs or something, and it's non-punitive, and it's exciting because crews really get into it, and they're like, oh, ours are better than yours, and so not that it's a light subject, but if you can make doing your job better and improving outcomes for people competitive, I mean, that's a win. And as part of that strategy for this coming budget year, if approved, we're going to put an auto pulse device on the battalion chief's rig, because what we've seen with our return of spontaneous circulation, when we get a heartbeat back with CPR and resuscitation, is that and this is all over the country, once you get them in an ambulance on that mattress and start transporting them to the hospital, quality of CPR goes downhill. And generally on scene, we get ROSC within 20 minutes usually if we're going to have a positive outcome, and that's about the time when the battalion chief's going to arrive to about 99% of our codes.
ROSC is?
Return of spontaneous circulation, when they start having a heartbeat. So sorry for the acronyms. And so the intent is, if approved, we'll have this device on the battalion chief's rig, so that when we're transporting the hospital, they'll have automatic chest compressions. So all of our providers will be properly seat belted in the back, and the patient will be getting proper compression. So excited to see what that data shows. Other than that, for the coming year, our big ticket items is working with Boundtree Medical. It's one of our consumables providers, and we're trying to do a Verde Valley, a regional purchasing agreement, and reduce some of our consumable costs, and maybe even have vending machines to better track equipment. So we do more of the on-time ordering that you see with Amazon or Walmart now, where nothing's in stock. It's just, it gets there quick. Because right now we order bulk quarterly orders of boxes and boxes of stuff, and then some of it expires on a shelf. And this will be more of point of use. Then a little box comes every week with just to restock the stuff. So we're looking at some of that. And then our electronic patient care reports, upgrading that system. And we've aligned it all. So the goal is January 19, we'll go live with an electronic patient care report that will receive data from dispatch, auto-populate. The crew will then enter stuff for the call. They will go to the hospital. They will have a barcode scanner on their tablet. It'll scan the patient's bracelet. It'll then dump the report to the hospital database, and then they'll come home. It'll dump the report to our firehouse records management software, and then they'll hit done. And we won't have paper floating around. It'll improve our HIPAA compliance, and it'll reduce the opportunity for human error, and it'll be truly a seamless electronic system that's in today's day and age. So that's kind of the stuff we're working on for this year.
Amazing.
It's like rocket science tree.
Amazing.
So
I'm jealous.
I'll tell you from my perspective why I think CIP has made it. You said you don't know if we've made it yet, or I can't remember what you said, but you've made it. So I sit on the readmission committee at the hospital once a month, and we talk about specifically related to the nursing homes, the patients that are readmitted, but they talk about all cause readmissions. Anybody who's discharged from the hospital or from a nursing home, you're working as hard as you can for them not to go back to the hospital. That's one of the things CIP is all about.
Yeah.
But it's also what Meals on Wheels and what home health is about and hospice. And 6 months ago we were talking about all those things, but CIP was never mentioned. I can't sit through a meeting now that they don't talk about CIP.
All right.
So it is now one of the assets that's listed of what do we use to keep people from being readmitted.
That's
to the
great
hospital.
feedback. Thank you.
So it's here to stay. It's not going to go away.
And
Because it's now an asset that they're using.
And ultimately, anecdotally, the chief and I geek on this all the time. And 100 years ago, we were killing kids in schools and people in businesses with fires. And then we started this robust fire prevention campaign across the United States. And now we've reduced fire deaths by so much. And if 80% of what we do now is medical, and we don't have some system that works towards healthcare prevention strategies, then we're missing the boat. And so that's kind of my driver.
And I think you'll see grant money coming from the hospital at some point, because the penalties are now starting to hit for readmission. So if a patient comes out of the hospital with CHF and within 30 days they're readmitted with CHF, the hospital is either penalized or doesn't get paid for the second admission.
Yeah.
And that's now trickling down next year to nursing homes. So if they discharge a patient too soon, sometimes it's not up to you. There's insurance, there's other things, but they're creating penalties for putting patients in precarious positions. So anything they can do to prop up those patients and avoid them coming back is financially beneficial. Well, when something's financially beneficial, somebody finds money to support it.
Yeah.
So I think you're going to see more support from the hospital.
I agree, and that's what the trends are showing nationally with the industry.
So board, from a way back time machine, we can go back and remember we talked about CIP, and there's a funding mechanism we supported. I believe actually, Mr. Montgomery, you may have been one that had said something of that nature. And right now, we still believe the funding's going to come someday. To what level, I don't know. But as Ed mentioned, to me, it's EMS prevention, and it's just the right thing to do for the right reasons. And it's not about trying to save the hospital money. It's about trying to help our customers, our citizens, with a better quality of life, because better quality of life is not going back to the hospital again and again and again. And so that's where we're at, and that's why we've continued to promote the program. And I do believe there'll be some funding. Whether it'll ever be 100%, I don't know. We get 0 for fire prevention activities, and we're okay with that. I'm on the bus because of quality of life issues and things. And right now we have a full-time guy that's doing half-time work between fire prevention, which John really needs help with, and truly believing this is where it's at. So we've got our kind of feet in both puddles here, and I'm very comfortable and grounded that we're doing the right things right. Back to the philosophy of our organization, and And so I'm very proud of what Ed's done in the world of community paramedicine. Certainly proud of Eric Walter for going from shift to a 40-hour position is a huge deal. But his commitment and passion for education and excellence in EMS is pretty amazing and much appreciated. So it's signs to me of what our organization's all about. And leaving shift to do that is not a comfortable one. But
Has there been any movement at the state or national level about being able to charge insurance for it, about creating it as a billable event?
The state has a little bit with the treat and refer stuff specific to access patients, which doesn't do us a lot of good in our community. So, and the state's really pushed their treat and refer program, and they keep asking, why aren't you on board? Why aren't you on board? And it's like, we're working through this first, and we don't have a lot of access patients. So we have other fish to fry, and eventually it'll wrap in. But that'll be part of a lot of our other stuff. Is we're gonna work towards some accrediting status within EMS within the state. It's called Premier EMS Agency this year with our changes to EPCR and stuff. And that'll open the doors. They're still having conversations between DHS and Access, and then the private insurers. We're hot on talking about some funding mechanisms, but then it went a little bit cold with the new administration federally, because everybody just said, well, we're not going to try to fix anything until we wait and see what they undo with the current healthcare system. And so I think that's artificially kind of holding up a lot of opportunity. But they just released EMS 2050, and you can go down a rabbit hole on that one. It's a predictive analysis of where we'll be in 30, 40 years, and a lot of that stuff will go away.
much like Board Member McCarthy said, it's not what you think it's going to be 10 years from now, and definitely by 30 years from now. And the last thing I want to say is, again, that commitment, putting Ed in as an EMS, a division chief in charge of EMS, again, it's 80% of what we do. And so for our organization, not every organization has an EMS division chief, but because of the commitment to the service level and the things that we're doing and the complexities that we're hearing about and all the stuff happening, like doing QI on cardiac arrests and streamlining our operations for equipment purchasing and consumables and all that stuff, and then overseeing training that Ed does, and so he's a got his foot not quite in straddle the line. He's more like a 75-25 type
Yeah.
of deal, pretty much EMS, and does the training oversight. Again, I think we're doing the right thing right, and I'm really proud of the organization and the work that Ed does with his team, and so thank you for that, Ed.
Question, Chief. What was the name of the device that to continue CPR? And
There are multiple devices out there. The one we selected was the AutoPulse from Zoll, and every manufacturer will tell you why theirs is better.
Of course.
Looking at the data, I was comfortable with the quality of their product and feedback from other agencies that use it. And then, quite honestly, we have Zoll monitors, and if we have a Zoll device, they talk to each other. And when they talk to each other, it further expands the realm of data we can collect and analyze. And so,
I used them for, maybe 10 years before I came here. Maybe I've been used them for a long time. They're fantastic. So the perfection of the CPR, it's a band. You lay the person on this half board,
right.
and you put it on there. You strap this Velcro on them. It cinches down to whatever size the person
I
is.
saw it on TV the other day.
Yeah.
And actually, the citizen actually sent me a link the other day saying, "Hey, Chief, you got one of these yet?" And I said, "It's funny. It's in the
Of
budget.
course,
We're
we've
trying
had
to
it
get
for a
one."
long time.
They're not cheap, but the freeing up of people, the safety of your folks on the crew not being flying around the back, and the level of service you're providing well outweigh the, what do we do, 25 to 30 cardiac arrests a year is what we do. Is that
Yep,
what you said?
2.5 a month.
Well, actually, there was one called Thumper.
Yep, Thumper's
Oh, yeah.
another one.
And Thumper, what have you, it was top heavy. And it made a terrible noise.
It ran off
And
oxygen.
as a matter of fact,
Yep.
it ran out of oxygen.
It ran off the pressure of an oxygen tank.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. And if you'd been using if you didn't have an independent oxygen tank with Thumper, what have you, top heavy, and if you
Whack
went
in the
around the
face.
corner,
Yep.
the gurney and everybody went over to the side. So
This thing's a little more advanced, a little bit.
thank God.
Well, thank you. I had an interest in keeping things moving. I want to see if we can, unless there's more EMS questions, I want to keep this going so we aren't here all night. And I know that.
Sorry, Chief.
No, not at all. Not at all. Your question. I know.
Yeah, I have to go pay the bills.
So with that, I'd like to move. Well, let me see what we got here real quick. Just so we can facilities. Let's move Bob up, because he's here, if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman. Is that all right if we move Bob up? We're gonna
Sure. Does
flip-flop and let Bob chat.
Does the board need a 5-minute break or anything, or are we good?
I'm good.
Keep moving.
All right, we're gonna try to
Go
keep
for
this as quick as we can, but Bob, we want to talk a little bit about your projects here as it relates to telecom, and
Sure, what link should I use?
you can sit down right there. I left you some food.
While Bob gets ready, are we gonna have someone speak on Chief Lukowski's?
Yes, yeah, we'll come back to that,
okay.
yeah. Since he's not here, we'll come back, but I want to get Bob, he's got work to do.
Okay. Bob, you're on.
So, yeah, I'm Bob Moats, telecom manager. There's 3 in Sedona Fire telecom section, telecom technician 2, Rich Scala, and Jeremy Harris, the user support lead technician. And so we perform hands-on IT, radio, telephone, electronic system and software installation and maintenance. We're asked to fabricate various items and engineer solutions in-house. And how we fit into the mission is by providing high availability voice and data signaling and messaging, along with data collection, data access, and storage systems. And so the Sedona Fire Telecom maintained systems are involved from the beginning to end of each call for service. So my group is responsible for items in the following areas. So we handle the two-way radio system, the fire station alerting system, the phone system, the IT computer network, servers, PCs, mobile data, email and internet access, the evacuation siren system, the microwave, data voice and radio backhaul, the wireless LAN Wi-Fi system, backup DC power, radio tower leasing management, the radio system maintenance for the City of Sedona Police through an IGA, and the radio infrastructure maintenance for the Copper Canyon Fire and Medical Authority through an IGA. Sedona Fire Telecom and a crew of 3 operates and maintains 52 servers, 10 radio channels, a unified voice over IP phone system with email and a point-to-point microwave wide area network. We have more than 20 equipment locations and cover over 430 square miles. Sedona Fire Telecom provides the connection to the Cottonwood Dispatch Center to the radio system and the various data services. The radio system is comprised of 16 tower locations and 10 channels. Sedona Fire has 35 mobile radios, 70 portable radios, a deployable cache of radios, and more than 30 digital pagers. The fire station alerting system also uses this system. The microwave network is comprised of 24 microwave links that connect the radio, data, and phone between our locations, and also connects to the Cottonwood Dispatch Center. The information services of our network is comprised of 52 servers, a voice over IP phone system, 150 computers and tablets, an email system, and a large number of software applications. The emergency evacuation siren system is comprised of 10 sirens that give audible warning to the Oak Creek Canyon and the Pine Valley areas. So telecom activities and projects, but not necessarily listed in order of priority. So we have the mobile data terminal redeployment, radio channel 1 conversion to simulcast and station alerting with heart saver tones, replacement of the Motorola XTS portable radios for the crew as they are end of life. And this will require the replacement of all the accessories since none are cross-compatible with old equipment. Radio system coverage improvements in the Oak Creek Canyon and elsewhere. Radio system redundancy improvements. Continuing systems proactive maintenance, repairs, and replacement cycle. Can't take my food in. As components age out and become unsupportable. Evacuation siren maintenance, software upgrades, patches, and new software versions on a broad area of IT items. DC and AC backup power system replacements and upgrades. Working with the U.S. Forest Service on radio location leases in the Schnebly Hill and Oak Creek Canyon areas. A number of other projects to include replacements of data routing and switching equipment, server rack space optimization, radio channel 3 and 6 upgrades, continuing with the microwave backhaul connectivity upgrade, and the automated system fault detection and reporting upgrade. And of course, we're continually looking for ways to reduce costs and provide more robust services. Just a couple of things.
That was the most concise and able to follow a report. Bob, you're 2 for 2 now. You're doing awesome. Completely complex. I threw some numbers out there at you: 52 servers, 150 computers and tablets, and 24 microwave sites, and links, and then we deal with complexities like narrow banding, some compliance issues and things that the federal government in different places, our people instill on us or change, and then their standards and other equipment and things that we do. We obviously sat here 2 months ago, I think it was, and I think it was about almost $300,000 worth of purchase orders to get things done. It is complex. When I spoke earlier at the budget type stuff about, hey, we've had some shut off and we didn't do some projects and things from that the 2008 era to 2013. Most of that, not most, but a lot. Bob took a pause on a lot of projects in that 5 years, if I understand that correctly. It was a little bit before my time, but there was not a lot happening in telecom.
In Sedona Fire, we had customer agencies that had our focus.
Correct, but we didn't have money. We weren't spending any money in capital replacements, and we paused and mothballed a lot of projects in that 5 years for Sedona Fire District, and so we're now catching up. And so when we look at that budget and look at those POs and look at those things, that we are catching up. We are getting things done, but to see us getting them done, getting. I don't know, have we seen enhancements where we've seen great improvement, or just, upgrading stuff, and it's the reliability factor and the parts and pieces? I don't know that I know that answer, so I can't say we've enhanced things greatly where we're seeing much greater bandwidth and speed and this.
Reliability, supportability. We're not waiting for things to break, although some things do. And sort of like with the utility, like the phone company, you have to plan ahead so that when something fails, you don't end up with the crew not able to communicate or be able to function, or talk to the alarm, that kind of thing. You don't want them dead in the water, obviously.
So those are the complexities and the redundancies that need to be built in, again, to do it right. When you're talking about critical infrastructure and people accounting on those things to happen. We throw a dispatch move in there somewhere in the middle of that probably wasn't on Bob's radar, back in whatever day that was. So that took a lot of time out of his schedule and his staff's schedule to be able to do those other projects we were trying to do that we would have been doing or been done by now if that didn't happen. That's taken a considerable amount of time. We don't calculate that in when we talk about the money we've saved in the dispatch, the actual physical dollars. We don't really back out and say, well, now Bob's got to do this much more work, therefore it's not quite as realized savings. There's definitely a realized savings, that's taken away by the work Bob has to do, being a customer versus a owner-operator when we were having our dispatch business. But we're making progress. We're getting lots of stuff done, and we're continuing to progress in that manner. We're still searching for another employee. There's one short. We've been looking for a while. We filled one for a short order. Didn't work out, so we're back at the drawing board looking at applications, so we'll hopefully find.
I thought we were going to contract that out.
Contract what out?
That position, or did I hear wrong?
Not that I'm aware of it, were we?
With the company
They did
Those are by job.
Arizona-wide?
Those are just contracted by project and by job. They're
Oh,
not,
okay, but not position.
No, they're not
Okay.
they're not doing daily repair work or that kind
Thank
of
you.
thing.
Correct.
Yeah.
Sorry if we misunderstood that. Yeah, that was definitely piecemeal work. Those are project-specific items that they were helping with.
How many technicians for work with Bob?
Well, there's 3 total in their group. One's more of an IT user lead. The other one's a telecom person, and then Bob, who tries to manage and lead, and climb towers, and hold wires together, and budget. And,
So you're down to 2, Bob? You and one other?
no, just one.
Just,
Well, just one. He's down one. Well,
He's
probably
down
like to have
one.
more. He'd like to have 2 or 3 more, probably.
well, that was my
Oh,
question for you.
I could really enjoy having another IT guy. We're kind of challenged in the area in that we have lots of applications from people who truly have not met our minimum qualifications. There's lots of interest in us providing training and trying to train someone up, but literally it takes years, and then once they find how much they're going to be in demand, then, you know.
That's kind of my question too, well, the first part of my question was going to be, of the several requisitions you presented a couple months ago, how many of those have we received and put on board, and are we waiting for any more? And the second question would be, you know, what would be an ideal staff for you? And if so, you know, are we overstaffed, understaffed? Obviously, we're understaffed. But so how many more bodies would you need to fulfill what you need to do?
I need to have another IT person, and I need to have another radio person.
For a total of, in your...
Total crew of 5.
Total of 5 in your charge.
We have had 7 as a crew in the past. I'm not going to ask for 7 at this time.
Well, at least not all at once at the end of the next budget. Okay.
But yes, because of the 24-hour nature of things, and you know, in the past, things like email and the IT services weren't as high a priority that needed a 24-hour response, and now we're heading more in that direction with the IT side of the house besides the radio side of the house.
And of those requisitions or purchase orders you put in recently, how many of those have come in and are on board, or we're still waiting for?
And when you say the requisitions?
Or the purchase orders that for equipment that was budgeted, have we received them already? Are they already on board, or are we still waiting on some?
Okay, so we're right in the middle of our microwave build out, and so that's as literally as we're here right now. You know, that work's being done. As far as the simulcast equipment, that's going to probably be arriving really close to the end of June, just because of the lead time from order. And so the turnaround of installing that, you know, you have to have all your pieces to your project before you start that one, because you can't change it one side at a time. You have to kind of have a simultaneous turn off the old, turn on the new.
And did this, last night we had 2 power outages in my neighborhood, and I don't know how widespread it was, but does that affect you and part of our fire district?
It does, and so planning ahead, we have DC power backup systems, AC power backup systems. We got a backup generator besides UPSs, and so in our redundancy plan, we have a redundancy at the power level. We have a redundancy at the infrastructure base station level, and so we have ways. So if, let's say, Schnibley Hill loses power, right? So then we can reroute, traffic away from Schnibley Hill, so to speak, to get back to dispatch and what have you. And so at Schnibley Hill, we have so many hours of battery backup time depending upon how much use there is there. And we can remotely monitor that. We have a way to actually remote in and see exactly what the battery capacity is left on the batteries. But of course, to be able to do that meant we had to figure out, when we built this, how do you build that in? Because to have battery backup only helps you if you know that you've lost power to that building, because then the timer starts, and then you have to have a response time to restore power to that building, or come up with some way to do it if the power company has an estimated power restore time that's way past when your batteries go dead.
Again, nothing complex, just a couple of wires and a
Couple of batteries.
and a big tall antenna thing. It's not, yeah. So, yeah, we didn't talk about the mountains in the middle and all that stuff. So it's a pretty impressive process. We're working on continuing to get Bob the tools and equipment he needs, the personnel he needs, where those, essentially is an extra body. The one he needs, looking at 5 would be ideal for him. He's got 3 in house. We got 1 on the books he's trying to fill. So we're still 1 short in the IT realm that we need to talk about or look at. We need to look at opportunities to in-house contract, what those type of things are. Is there a better way to make a mousetrap for our system? Things like that. So we're constantly looking at those opportunities, trying to get ahead of the curve. And as we'll talk about a little bit with fire prevention, John doesn't have the right number of staffing for really getting all the work he needs done. So we're trying to constantly balance all of these pieces and everything work. And so it's a delicate balance, and Bob does a great job trying to make it all happen. And what's up there in this part of his brain and what he can get accomplished, really, I'm confident that we supersede our abilities in what any of us could do without Bob. He exceeds expectations all the time. He understands the complexities of the process and the system, but we need to make sure we also, keep that moving so it's not all up there and it's sustainable, and so we're continually working at making that happen in best practices and not bubble gum and baling wire and eBay and all those type of things.
Last winter, we got you some new vehicles, or a new vehicle. And the concern was, every time we went up on these mountain roads, we were on thin ice, potholes, bad road conditions, bad weather conditions. We made it through the winter, it sounds like, but is there still more that you're gonna need in way of vehicles or road maintenance, or is that a never-ending battle?
I would have to look in the budget to see which year that we had put in for a new snowcat.
We talked about that earlier.
To this point, we've been very fortunate, and it's been light snow, but not from the fire side, but from our site access, side. But we get back to normal winters, and yeah, you'll have easy 6 to 10 feet of snow on top of the mountains, and they generally don't plow the roads open until there's enough need, and then the users of all of the towers pool their money together to get a bulldozer, like a D9 dozer, to go doze the road open if the Forest Service also approves it.
Multiple agencies.
Multiple agencies, yes, because depending upon which mountain we're talking about, this could be $10,000 to $15,000 each time you plow the road open. Really can be. So, with our equipment, as long as you have a winch, you have 4-wheel drive and chains, have all the necessary, winter gear, you're usually, pretty good up to the point where you have, a foot to 6 inches. Once the front bumper, is pushing snow, you're not going up the hill in a truck. You're just not. So we try to not put ourselves in a dangerous situation, and we understand that there is no extraction service. If you get stuck back there, no one's coming to get you. We have to rescue each other. So I have to be set up to rescue Rich. Rich has to be set up to rescue me. We might have to call Jeremy if something else goes on. And that's why we ask for 4-wheel drive vehicles. And even like right now, it's not winter time. It just snowed yesterday up in the high country, but the mud can be so bad that it's almost worse than snow. And I've been, in a good vehicle climbing, Squaw Peak there by Camp Verde, and it rained like the day before, and I had to stop, and with my brakes all the way on, I'm sliding backwards. And so the only way to get, resituated is to go find something to winch on, and hopefully, my winch cable is long enough, and so most of the time it is. I say most of the time.
So as I wrap this up with Bob, I don't want to pile it on, but I can't help but notice, just listening to the things that we're doing, whether we get done talking about the legal constraints and the things that we have going on there, the budgetary concerns and the processes we go through there, the special operations, just the regular fire and EMS response, the telecom situation, managing and leading all of that in each of their own individual rights. We haven't heard about fire prevention yet, and a couple other logistics and facilities yet. There's not a lack of stuff happening for us to really be on top of, and so I don't want to understate it enough, but it's not a matter of, well, this is just like where I used to come from. This is completely different than where I came from. I can tell you that for sure. The complexities. It was pretty simple. We went on fire calls, EMS calls, did some tech rescue here and there, but not to the level where we're at, not to the telecom level, not to all that stuff. So we had neighbors to help with mutual aid that help with response times and all that other stuff. And so it's a lot to manage, and I don't want to understate the need to do it and do it right in this business and not just, well, I don't want to worry about it. It'll probably never happen. So thank you, Bob, for your synopsis of what you got there and all the great work you do.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
Okay.
Chair, if we can go back up to facilities.
Sure, number 4.
I think we've got Chief Coyle. Here you go. Chief Lekowski's under the weather here, so we've got some stand-ins, so just pretend this is Buzz speaking. Say go Cubs or something.
Yeah, there you go.
Sorry.
Just gotta put a W. I didn't know for years why every once in a while a flag with a W on it was on Buzz's Facebook page, but
You got that
I
now?
eventually figured it out.
Go Cubs, go.
All right, so facilities. I ran the facilities program for I guess 5 or 6 years, about that, 6 years, 7 years, and what a challenge in our organization. Between the age of the buildings and then the fact that a number of them were not purpose built. A lot of that ties back into what we were talking about, response times and everything. One of the to me the drivers of the facility stuff is that looking at how we can what if anything can be done to improve response time with what we have. And it's interesting because there's a difference. We're still working on getting those numbers more accurate and getting a large enough sample to make sure that we're change we make, we're affecting good change. But it definitely makes a difference on these calls when the guys are sleeping at multiple different areas within the station, because that's where the only place where they can put the bunks, and versus the way Station 6 is designed that way. But with that being said, when we talk about facilities, it's all of the stations that we have. So of those stations, we have Station 1, 3, 4, 5, and 6 that are manned. And then we also have Station 2 and 7 and 8. Station 8 is where Bob and his crew work out of down there on 89 there by Pine, what's it called? Pine Shadows. Forgot the name of it. And then Station 7's up Oak Creek Canyon, up in the northern end of Oak Creek Canyon there, the one that kind of hangs out over the creek. No bathroom, nothing like that in it. And Station 2's at the bottom of Red Rock Loop Road. And those 2 unmanned stations have apparatus in them. But that's really about it. And then the remote tower sites. So, that is a challenge for a few reasons, because number one, there's monitoring stuff on the conditions within those. Almost every one of actually not almost everyone, every one of the tower sites or the remote buildings for servers and stuff have redundant air conditioning systems, and we don't get much of a heating bill ever. It's just that you just don't have to condition the air as much in the wintertime. So those systems are set up on alternating duplexing systems. So if there's 2 units, then they take turns operating until a threshold is met. Say it's supposed to come on at 65 degrees until it exceeds that by a certain amount, and then they'll both come on. Unfortunately, because of the age of a lot of different places that there's not good monitoring to them, and like Bob said, it may take a long time to get there. So, the reason I'm explaining that is because that kind of drives a bigger conversation that Buzz and I had, is that when it comes to facilities, there's kind of 2 approaches. There's the fix it when it breaks, or anticipate need based on life cycle, or based on any reductions in costs you may be able to gain through added efficiencies relative to the position something is in its life cycle. When we did, I guess about 10 years ago, we did all the 12 years ago, did all the HVAC units and stuff on the roofs. At that time, when we looked at the cost of the current units and the SEER and what they offer, there's upgrades to that, upgrades to lighting, everything. We could, over the 12-year life cycle, we could pay for those units and pay for the roofs. So we paid up front for that stuff, and then we enjoyed that savings over 12 years. Of course, now what that sets us up for is towards the end of that 12 years, and there's more units going out at the same time, because when it comes to the big companies, are pretty good at knowing how long under normal conditions stuff lasts. And so, Buzz has been dealing with that the last couple of years. There's been a higher incidence of failures of large component parts to HVAC systems, things like that. The roofs are still holding up, but you know, that problem, we were able to kind of kick the can further down the road. I think it was a very intelligent choice to do it that way, but you know, it's coming back around again. So, and unfortunately too, at the time, the board at that time, we had an opportunity to get solar on all of our structures and get 9 cents a kilowatt hour back. And there were some people who had on the board that had cited information from Seattle, which doesn't exactly align with their Sedona weather, that was not a smart decision, so we drove away from that. We would have made over $1 million year to date on the cost of the solar, and we could have used that to, in perpetuity, continue to replace the equipment. Unfortunately, APS, they had mandates at the time that they had to provide very big rebates, and that ship has sailed. So there was opportunities organizationally we looked at to try to reduce facilities costs over time, but at least those really lucrative ones, they're not around anymore. And if there's new ones like that, I'm not aware of them. So, you know, that Buzz in his budget, you know, he has pointed out, or sorry, you guys already saw his budget, but he has here a station by station list of everything where the work needs to be done. And you know, one of the challenges is that when he and I talk to, it keeps coming up, is that there's just work like things that paint the buildings. You know, there's some of these buildings really need a fresh coat of paint. But it's also easy to push fresh coat of paint back 6 months. And the next thing you know, you find yourself pushing the fresh coat of paint back 6 months, you know, a half dozen times because you need new HVAC units and things like that. And now all of a sudden we're doing damage to the structures because they haven't been painted. And so he's just been, you know, working within the constraints to find that kind of that sweet spot and try to normalize those trends over time, but still take care of the emergent needs. You know, that's I think from the stuff that went on during the consideration for bonding when they went around, the serious flaws with some of the stations that I would imagine you all are already aware of. If not, I could speak in a superficial way to that. But I can tell you this: I started at Station 4, and when I did, we had to do asbestos abatement on the structure. So that kind of that was 20 years ago. So gives you an idea about how long it's been there. I think it's been early or 60s for part of it, 72 for another part of it, and so yeah. But I don't know, Chief. That's really about all.
One thing I want to say on facilities as well is, you know, you saw in the capital plan, there was numerous projects that were outlined in the budget or in the bond process that are now being plugged in different years. And just to, you know, understand that we talked about if the bond would have passed, that those items would have been earmarked in whatever years they were. Now they're being earmarked in whatever years they are now based upon where they can fit in the budget. And more piecemeal than kind of chunked out with, hey, let's do this and do these type of things. But we're looking at concrete repairs. We're looking at all these things. They talked about being cash payments, so there won't be any financing of those type of projects. At one point, there's a Station 3 remodel for $1.2 million that's in the budget, that's there. It's a swag number that we put in there for 5 years from now or whatever that number, whatever year that was. But so we're addressing all those things, and we'll do them, and we'll pay cash for them, and we'll get them done. And you know, they need to be done. They need to be done before. What you didn't see in that capital plan that was in the bond stuff we talked about was a maintenance facility.
Yes.
We did not have any plans in that capital plan to do anything with a maintenance facility. So all the problems we have with the maintenance facility, currently not fitting some of our trucks and doing those things, the safety of the pit, all that still exists. We don't have any mechanism at this point in time in place to figure out how we're going to address that. That doesn't mean we won't get to it, we won't find the opportunity or whatever it may be. But right now, it's not in that capital plan. Everything else, though, I think for the most part, from the bond is being addressed in what we presented to you, to my knowledge. Maybe not. I don't know that Station 1 admin remodel is in there either. I can't remember right now off the top of my head. So anyway, just that's facilities in a nutshell.
I will say that the new marquee on Fire Station 1 has not gone unnoticed.
Yeah, I pulled up the other day and saw that too, and yeah, it was, those are back to, we don't paint the place for 6 months, we'll do something, I'll get that replaced when I do that. This place needs to be tuck pointed. For 3 years, we've been talking about tuck pointing, and it's like, I gotta get it done, but then 4 HVAC units go down, we gotta rent a crane to get them up here, we gotta do stuff, and it's a huge,
Okay then.
that was thunder, wow.
It's here.
Oh, did I roll my windows up?
So it's things like that, and tuck pointing is not one of those, like, I feel like I really got something valuable when I know I gotta do this other thing and fix the bathroom and do the stuff that's more in your face, but at some point, tuck pointing creates far greater problems by not doing it, so it's those type of things, getting this, driving the parking lot seal coated, all this stuff, and so, again, we have a guy who's a battalion chief who really his focus is on maintaining the safety and wellness of his crew and managing the incidents that occur. And we say you got to take care of facilities. It's not, again, we're not going to go hire a facilities person, but a great opportunity for us, again, I look at a volunteer capacity down the road somewhere, we could find someone who's interested in helping us with some of the facilities and things like that, that could focus on these projects and keep some of the stuff together. So, lightning strike?
I don't know, I was gonna look at I was gonna look at my version and see if I can find it.
Smoke in the garage, Jason, you can head out. So, if we got smoke in the garage, we should probably turn this over to John real quick so he can get his presentation in before he gets called out to do an investigation.
Let me know.
Thanks, Chief.
Yeah, we'll call you.
Okay, so that kind of brings up,
The important stuff,
yeah,
the important part of this whole show, right?
you got it. Let her rip.
Well, I've got a brief overview for community risk management for you, and then all the questions that you want to ask, I'm here to answer. So, as you know, in community risk management, we do a number of things. We do code enforcement, public education, plans reviews, cause determination, all of that good stuff. And in our division, we have myself, Administrative Assistant Carla, and Rick Evans, the fire inspector, and of course Eric Walter, who is our community paramedic. These are some of the numbers of the occupancies that we are responsible for. Overall, there are 2,722 total occupancies that we have in our computer system. That does not count the 1- and 2-family dwellings with residential sprinkler systems. The good thing about the 1- and 2-family dwellings that do have residential sprinkler systems is they don't require any ongoing inspections from the Community Risk Management Division. Once those sprinkler systems in 1- and 2-family dwellings are installed, we're involved in the plans reviews for those. We're involved for the rough-in and insulation and pressure tests of those systems, and we also perform a final acceptance test on them. But after that, there's no more yearly inspections required by the fire department. It's up to the homeowner at that point in time to perform those annual inspections.
Who does that, Chief?
The homeowner is responsible for it.
Yes, of course.
Now, many homeowners do it. Many of them hire an inspection company, a sprinkler contractor to come out and do those. They're very simple to do.
You're talking about an inspection?
Yeah, the yearly inspections on the 1- and 2-family, the NFPA 13D sprinkler systems. Essentially, all that's involved is opening the valve, the inspector's test valve, letting the water flow, let the bell come on, and close the valve. That's really all there is to it. They're very easy to do.
Has any thought been given to a single-page document mailed to a homeowner to do a self-inspection, sign it, and send it back in?
We have not. We have not, just because of the cost, and it's not. They're given all that information when that alarm system is installed. So, and there's no requirement on us to do that. Those ongoing inspections. So, essentially, it's not like we don't have enough other stuff to take care of to
absolutely.
add something else that
Sure,
we're not
of
required to
course,
do.
sure.
So we really haven't pursued that.
Okay.
I just think, concur, what have you, that, you know, we still have Red Rock News and what have you.
Oh,
and so
absolutely,
forth,
absolutely,
to accomplish, your plate's full, entirely full.
Yeah.
absolutely.
But nevertheless,
Sure.
It's another public relations thing.
Absolutely.
And so just, you missed some of the discussion we've been having about this PIO piece, but we've already named like 4 or 5 things just right off the bat that, you know,
Sure.
and they haven't even talked about anything about safety. It's all these other, you know, yeah, so an article about, hey, if you have a sprinkler, you know, system in your home, you know, great guest perspective for you to provide, or you know, piece to put in the paper one of these, you know, slow times, like you did your wildfire one. That's a great example, and great teamwork for us to be having some of these dialogues. So, thank you.
So that's a view of the numbers of occupancies that we deal with on a regular basis. Inside of those occupancies, and this falls along with the systems that we track in the compliance engine. There are 621 sprinkler systems. They require annual service and a 5-year service. Kitchen hood exhaust systems, 140 of those in our district. Those require cleaning at least twice a year, sometimes more based on use. Or solid fuel hoods require cleaning 12 times a year or more, depending on the buildup that they get. So you can see that it's not just 140 hood inspections a year, it's double that or more. Commercial fire alarm systems, 181 of those. Again, those are annual services. We get about, I already talked about the 1- and 2 family dwellings with the sprinkler systems. We have about 2,000 of those 1- and 2 family dwelling sprinkler systems out there in our district. So that's respectable. That's a good thing. I tell people ask, why should I get a fire sprinkler system in my house? And it is essentially like having a firefighter in every room of your house 24 hours a day, and you don't have to feed him spaghetti. So that's
Or donuts.
Yeah, or donuts. But we have about 2,000 of them out there. With our special systems, we're getting about an 85% compliance rate. As I said, we track those through the compliance engine. Now, when this program started about 3 or 4 years ago, the compliance rate was about 40%. So you can see that has steadily climbed up to where it is now, approximately 85% range. Talking to other departments that have been doing the same sort of tracking on these systems, they feel that around 90% is probably about as good as you're going to get. You're always going to have that 10% that don't comply and you're following up on. So we're probably approaching maximum effectiveness of that program.
Real quick, so the leveraging of technology, for those that weren't here on the board or don't remember, so the compliance engine is a third-party vendor that notifies people, hey, your inspection is due, and upload. Sprinkler contractors can go there, upload, check the boxes that they've done their inspection, it passed, all that stuff. And so it eliminates work on our side. It creates reporting mechanisms back. It creates reminder notices to people, hey, this is coming up, get your backflow preventer checked, whatever it is that they do in this compliance engine, which 3 or 4 years ago was fairly new to Arizona. It's across the country doing, they're busy all the time doing agencies. They're always adding agencies, and so we've been doing it a while, but at the time it was kind of, I wonder how this is going to work. And so to be at 85% already, I think is good stuff, and it's taken workload off of you. Is that correct, John?
Tremendously. So, as the chief said, that they send out, you have a business with a sprinkler system, 30 days before your system is due, you get a notice in the mail. Hey, Mr. Soto, your sprinkler system is due for its annual inspection. Last year you used ABC sprinklers. Here's their phone number. Give them a call and schedule your inspection. Perfect. So you either call or you don't call. If you call, the guy goes out, shows up, does your annual inspection, logs everything in the compliance engine. We get a report and it says Mr. Soto's sprinkler is back up to date. It's not due until a year from today. And then the whole process repeats. If you don't call ABC sprinklers to get it done. You get another, at 45 days, you get another notice. Hey, you still haven't taken care of this. 30 days after that, if you haven't, then we get it and we show up and say, hey, your sprinklers due, you gotta get it done. I would be willing to bet it has probably cut our contact on dealing with those types of systems by at least a factor of 5, 1/5 of the time, or just the contacts, and it's made a huge difference, huge difference.
And that's come about since you've been on board.
It was started prior to me coming here, but we had started the same system at my old department about a year and a half before I left. So I think about the same time Sedona was starting, Lebanon Fire District was starting. So we're about, it's like I walked out of one door and into the other door at about the same place in the process.
Gotcha.
So it wasn't a new program for me.
A lot of questions when we started though, who's gonna, is there a fee for that?
There is a fee. So the fire code gives us the ability to require the form that we receive these reports in. We dictate that to the contractors. This is the form that we accept, only this form. So we've said we only accept submittals through the compliance engine. So when they go out, when they come out to check your sprinkler system, and they submit the paperwork, the contractor pays an extra $12 to submit it. So that covers the cost of the whole program. Some contractors have increased their price by $12 to cover the cost of it. Other contractors have said, we don't charge for it, and it has improved our business dramatically because, again, they're not the ones that have to call and say, hey, Mr. Soto, your sprinkler system is due for its service. They're getting a letter from us. Yeah, they're getting a letter from the fire department saying it's fire code requirement and it's due. So those people are calling them, and they're also staying on top of it. They're not going 18, 24 months before they get a call. So most of the sprinkler contractors have told us their business has actually improved, and again, they're spending less time on the phone tracking down people saying, hey, it's time to get your sprinkler system serviced. So some charge for it, some don't. Either way, it's not only helped the fire department, it's helped the contractors stay on top of that as well.
Thanks for sharing. I want to just make sure we got
Yeah,
more detail.
yeah,
That's a cool
absolutely.
system we put in play. It's working.
It is, and for $12 a year on these systems, it's really not. It's $1 a month. It adds up, but it's worth its weight in gold as far as I'm concerned. Public education. We do all sorts of public education. We've talked about it. Firewise assessments, the community integrated paramedicine, which Ed talked about. All sorts of stuff. The bike rodeo, unfortunately, was supposed to be tomorrow. We had to cancel that this year because the kids were out. They're not in school today. They would have gotten the message today to bring their bikes tomorrow. So we're probably going to look at trying to repeat that in the fall. Do lots of public safety messages. That's one thing that Eric has done for us. He dealing with the community paramedicine. His schedule is not always. It's somewhat fluid and flexible. So we've got him picking up a lot of stuff here and there for us on the fire prevention side. So one of the things that I tasked him with was a weekly safety message. So every week every Wednesday on Facebook, the new safety message comes out. We had a departmental meeting yesterday, and Eric told us, he said, look, I'm getting to the point where I'm getting pretty comfortable in how I deal with the community paramedic stuff. I've got this whole weekly safety message down. He's doing all the follow-up on the compliance engine for us, and he said, I'm getting to the point I'm pretty comfortable with that. I can take on some more responsibilities on the fire prevention side. So, like I told him, we'll stack more stuff on you. You might not get it all done, but my bucket in my office is overflowing. Rick's bucket is overflowing. So I said, we'll put some more responsibility on you, but when it starts overflowing, don't freak out. I said, all of our buckets are overflowing right now. So we do the CPR and first aid instruction, which actually Ed probably talked about. That's more his wheelhouse. I just include it because it is a public education portion of what we do in the department. The Milo and Moxie program, which is a canned fire prevention program that we go out to the schools with, that was developed by the Arizona Burn Foundation. And of course, we participate in a lot of things like Read Across America, those sorts of things.
Chief?
Yes.
The CPR first aid program, do you go to them? Do they have to come to you?
The way that we get calls about it quite often, lots of emails, lots of calls. But right now, Jody in the front office, she is our CPR and first aid coordinator. She's also an instructor, but we refer all the calls to her. She schedules the classes. What are they doing? About one a month?
Oh, I think more than that, I believe. Actually, I'm not 100% certain.
They
I
do
think it's
it
more
on
than that.
Saturdays, and the CPR class is in the morning. The first aid class is in the afternoon. I think they're $50 for each class, or if you sign up to take both of them, it's $90. But I think she's doing at least one a month.
Have they added AED instruction to the CPR and,
Oh, yeah.
for
I think
example,
that
if they
is-
have a heart smart?
Yes, I think that is part of every CPR certification now is
Okay.
AEDs. I do believe
Okay.
that is included in all of them.
And that's $90 per individual that's
Per
being.
individual.
Got it.
It's $50 for the CPR, $50 for the first aid, and if you sign up and take them both on the same day, it's $90.
Got it.
That takes care of some of the administrative costs. It takes care of the books, the cards cost money, all that type of stuff. We're actually a CTC, something training center. CPR training center. I forget the T and the C are training center, and so we're for the region here. So all the people come for us for CPR cards. All the people come here, even from I think other states. Some people from Utah might use us if I'm not mistaken. So
Well, I'm just curious because I'm going to be scheduling it for a church, so, okay.
yep.
Talk to Jody. She will
Okay.
set you up. Other topics, company inspections. I know this is a program we've been working on for a while. It is scheduled to go out to the shift next week for training. Let me say that. It was scheduled to go out to the shift next week for training until Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of this week came along. I'm still hopeful that we'll make it. There's a couple last-minute tweaks that we're making. If it doesn't start next week, it will start the week after. But anyway, it's going to be implemented shortly. The inspection frequency, I've talked about the buckets are overflowing. I will be honest with you, we have occupancies within our fire district that we've never been in for a fire inspection. It's not for lack of trying, it's just that there are so many sprinkler systems and so many businesses and only so many hours in the day. So that's what I was talking about this week. Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday came along, and we got more calls this week on immediate life safety hazards that we had to deal with, and it was so like everything that was scheduled got pushed back. In fact, Rick was telling me yesterday, he said, I've got 99 follow-up inspections in my queue that I haven't got to yet. We got to keep plugging. We just keep plugging. And,
Another great opportunity for a volunteer
exactly.
opportunity. So
But we just keep plugging away, and that's what I keep harping on Rick and Eric is it's hard to do, but as this stuff comes in, we just got to prioritize and deal with what floats to the top. And if it's important, we deal with it right away. And if it's not, it just kind of sits there until we get to it. Then we just keep working, and that's all you can do. We're getting ready to implement some electronic records. In the office in there, there's file cabinets, and in next year's budget, if everything works out, there's a program called Laserfiche, which is an electronic records management system that all of those records will go into. And, you know, part of our meeting yesterday, that in our departmental meeting that I talked about, is we just have to keep finding those little things. You know, I don't want anybody in my office to not feel like they can't say, hey, I think I found a way to do something better. I am completely committed to doing the best that we can, and nothing, there's, you know, the whole thing, there's no stupid ideas. And if we try it and it doesn't work, that's okay. I've tried a lot of things that didn't work in the past. We'll try it for a while. If it doesn't work, we'll go back to the way we did.
So initially, it'll be labor intensive for the electronic records input.
Yeah, and that's another. We were talking about that yesterday again. That's another a good place for a volunteer.
Volunteer.
Yeah,
Perfect.
that if somebody wanted to come in and do office work, clerical work, we can say, hey, all those things need to go in that little box right there. Just start scanning stuff in. So, yeah, there's no shortage of work, but we keep plugging along. And I think, yeah, that was it. That was it.
You know,
Questions?
more of a statement than a question, but 3 years ago, when I was getting familiar with everybody, your predecessor was informed me that there wasn't a fire prevention program here, and I couldn't believe that really didn't. That can't be. And I talked to the chief about that, and once I got on the board, I mentioned to the chief that was one of the issues that I would try and champion and get it pushed. And here we are now, but a week or two away from it actually happening.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I couldn't be more proud of and I haven't even seen the program, but knowing that is going to be on board.
Sure.
And
Company inspection, right? You said
company
fire
inspections,
prevention.
yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
company inspection.
company inspections. Fire prevention's always been on board, but I think there was 1,447 businesses, you said, or to that effect?
2,700.
2,700, okay.
2,700, yeah.
If that's going to be taken off your plate because they're company inspections, that may inevitably free up some time for you and your staff, although there may be some interaction between documenting and what have you. But in the big scheme of things, I think it's a long-awaited program that I think is going to be well received by, even though it may cost the business owner some money because of being out of code or out of compliance, but it will make every firefighter a little bit safer when they go into these buildings in the middle of the night for an emergency, and they'll have a better understanding of where they're going. So,
Well, you know, our original rollout day when we started at the end of last year, really getting the ball rolling, we were looking at the end of March, middle of April, and we're behind that. But all in all, I thought that was a little aggressive that we had tried to shoot for.
yeah.
Wasn't that bad. I mean, we're in the ballpark.
For some reason, I had September in the back of my mind, so you're well ahead of the curve. So I'm waiting.
Definitely
I'm
was
waiting.
September, sir.
It'll be done. It will be in place by September. I guarantee that.
For sure.
Yeah.
So I think we talked, someone used the word nimble earlier today. You know, certainly we are a nimble organization. Jeff Pachura definitely talked about it in his article in the newspaper and maybe even here in his last board meeting. Nimble we are, but sometimes the practicality of how long things actually take to get done and institutionalized or done right. And I think that's another part of our organization is that we prefer to do it right. And I think Jason even said something to that effect today. It's better to do it right than do it fast. And well, that can sometimes drive me a little squirrely, understanding though also that that's a key point. And so us getting the company inspections done right or our training done right, or there's shortcuts you can take, but you pay for it in the end. And our organization is pretty good about trying to make sure we do it right. So
I had a battalion chief that always used to say, never enough time to do it right, always time to do it over.
Yeah.
so you're on B shift?
No, that was the C shift.
So,
It's always the sea shift.
It is.
okay. Well, thank you, John, for that.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you for your time.
Looks like we got Heidi up next maybe, or is that, logistics, do we have
Hopefully flashing. Thank you.
logistics? We talked about facilities, we didn't talk about logistics, did we?
I don't think logistics.
No. So if I can real quick, just talk about logistics from Battalion Chief Dave Cochran's perspective. He shared with me some information as it relates to logistics. So basically, logistics are everything you can put in a fire station except the fire station. You can put in a moving truck, basically. That's what he does. So no fire trucks, no facility itself, but everything that goes in it. And so he's constantly looking at things such as NFPA 1500, which is the occupational health and safety standards, and all that relates to our health and fitness and wellness is a component of that. But also then there's standards for our breathing air requirements. There's standards in the respiratory protections. We have to do fit testing every year, both in our masks, both in our N95 masks, the different things that we use there. Standards for our SCBAs, they must be tested and annually inspected and hydro tested and all these different things for the bottles. And so lots of moving parts that go on there. Our aerial truck and all the ground ladders need to be tested every year by a third party, coordinates that. And those are kind of the gist of logistics.
So-
Station supplies, you make sure we order station supplies, things like that as well.
So rehab wouldn't fall in that, right?
Rehab would be under the safety part and more of an operational piece, the rehab actions of actually happening.
Okay.
So on a fire, we do rehabs. We get done with a fire, and then we check blood pressure, pulse, and do some different things. Now we're doing decontamination and cancer prevention stuff. So that is. I don't like that microphone. So rehab would be, I think, more of under an operational, the fitness, safety, and health component.
Okay.
Which he may have part of as well. So I'm trying. My brain's trying to catch up with your question. So pardon me, but it is something we do.
Okay.
So on the radar, things that we're looking at, you saw in the plan. You saw in the plan some things that were out there. If you noticed, extrication equipment, we're looking at upgrading or replacing some of our extrication equipment with called e-tools, so e-hydraulics, and so instead of hooking up to the not the compressor, but the generator and running hydraulic fluid, they're run actually by battery power. And given our environment, it's a way better way to go. Technology's changed, so we're in the process of replacing those, and it's about $35,000 per truck. So again, for me, that's a great tool to say, let's get a couple of those a year and spread it out over a little bit of time. That's okay. Type of thing. So they have a 6 to 8 year time frame for that. All the hose, 4-inch supply hose, is about 20 years old, so it's time to replace that. And again, we're really getting into a system now where we're just trying to buy so much hose each year, so we just constantly get into hey, every year we're buying so many lengths of hose, or 1,000 feet of hose, or whatever we're buying, so that it gets on a system and it's bite-sized chunks instead of we got to replace all of our hose, which logistically creates challenges for
And will
us.
you sell the old stuff off?
It depends if there's a market for it or
No,
not.
contractors and that sort of
Yeah,
thing, they use it all the time.
We usually surplus it is what we do, and then sometimes it gets bought, sometimes it doesn't. So turnout gear, we're in the process of continuing to make sure we have all of our turnout gear. We have, again, a cycle for that. We're in the process of having 2 sets of turnout gear, which is the new best practice industry standard for cancer awareness, and certainly looking at opportunities to reduce exposure to cancer. And so that's all part of Battalion Chief Cochran's stuff. Looking over the budgets to provide predictable expenses and spreading them out as well. So again, if he's looking at saying, hey, I think I'm hoping to spend this much a year in logistics, he can balance that out to where he can versus, hey, I need this year, Bob needs that this year, and we have this just huge spike. And that's what that capital plan does for us, and all of our administrator, manager folks kind of get it, so they help looking, hey, I got an opening here, we need some stuff. Hey, that's the, let me plug in my extrication tools that year then, or I can wait, I'll limp it along another year, and I'll take the spot, so to speak. So SCBA, we talked about that earlier, and again, upgrade all of them at the same time. Will they have some trade-in value is what Battalion Chief Cochran talks about, or B, run them into the ground to where there's no trade-in value, and we maybe buy them over a period of time, which has some concerns, again, for for consistency. Or, as Mr. Montgomery said today, maybe we at least purchase them and go that route. But it's going to be a $700,000 purchase, so it's a big number. And that's an estimate right now, but it's pretty neat for fire guys. You know, in the business, you remember when we got the first thermal imaging camera. Remember we did the fundraiser to get $35,000 to
Bake
have
sale.
a camera, a bake sale. You did a pancake breakfast, whatever, and you got the one thermal imager, and you thought you had the world. They're like $3,500 now, and they're the size of this microphone. They're smaller. The new air packs actually have them on the regulator. So in your regulator, where you're looking at, you actually have your own personal tick
Really?
on the regulator now. It's you know, between the heads-up displays, it's just technology. It's so cool what's happening, and those are things that you want to try to capitalize. And that's why some of those phasing in approaches are nice, because you don't have this, we got to wait 20 more years. We just bought air packs, so whatever technology's on the horizon today, we're stuck for another 20 years without. That's the downside to doing those big purchases. So with that, that's logistics. Dave does a good job trying to make sure all that stuff happens and is taken care of amongst his other duties. And so that's it. So I have nothing else on logistics.
Thank you, Chief. Moving right along then, unless there's any other questions. I think, Heidi, you're up.
I wish I was.
Or are you?
I think she
I
is.
think you are.
I think she is, but if she doesn't want to be.
I do. It keeps me out of the wireless display, so it's very sad.
So very sad. You guys are troopers. You hanging in there? You need jumping jacks for a quick second while she's setting up?
Oh, yes.
5-minute break?
You want to just do a quick 1 minute, 2 minute break, whatever, or you want to do a 5 minute?
Right to 3:30, right on the nose.
3:30, okay.
Whenever you're ready. Then we'll go ahead and reconvene, and Heidi, you are up.
Well, thank you. How are you holding up?
Good.
Good? So thank you so much for your participation to this point. We've covered a lot of information, and hopefully you found that this coming together was a valuable experience in fulfilling the mission of the Sedona Fire District. And in a way, that's kind of the coming together. That's the way I view my role in the organization for our administrative team. So here we are in administration. It's not quite as exciting as what the guys had to talk about, but it doesn't mean that it's any less valuable. So I think we've all met, and I've been introduced before, so I'm the new administrative services manager, coordinating the efforts of our administrative team. We're here to support the board, the chief, the staff, and then the community by just what we do every day. I have brought for you, I'm sure you have seen, our org chart. Take one down and pass it around.
Thank you.
So our current
You got two.
updated org chart, for your reference, we'll keep one for Ty.
Okay.
Chief's seen it, but he can have one.
I'll take it. I guess am I at the top still or at the bottom? Where am I?
You're at the top. We're
Depends which
still
kind of
at
org
the
chart.
top.
Some people flip it. And
You can. I didn't flip anything. That is the one that is presented. So I'll put it up on the screen as well, so you can look at it there or here or wherever you like to. So here's the reference. We're primarily about people. Ed talked about people, about the community, about the team. Everyone here talking about the technology. It's still all about people, how we use all these, and we're kind of in the root of the people on the admin side. We're here to serve and support. So here's our team. It's a nice chart. It's titles. It's very exciting. I would like to help you know a little bit more about your team and who those names are. So we work with some of them pretty closely, and others are just in passing or you know it by email. But to put some names with those titles and their roles for the organization, that's my role. That's getting the people to the front of the work. So we've talked about Jody, our administrative clerk. She's the one who answers your call. She's the front line of the organization for the reference, for service to the public, answering your questions, and routing calls. She's also our certified CPR instructor, so it's kind of nice to see that other angle and that tie-in between the two houses, if you will, the administration and our operations. Our administrative specialist to the fire chief, sitting over in typing land. Fastest typist in the West. She's really very organized, responsive, and I hope that you all have taken to requesting what you need of her, reaching out. She is there to answer any of your questions or concerns. If you have any that go beyond her needs and she's not available, of course, I'm your resource as well. Our ambulance billing team, we've talked about the importance of the revenue. That's Chris Ahern and Amy Hedman. And if you haven't had the chance to meet them, pop in their office. They're usually in there typing away as well, working to catch up furiously from that small backlog we had. They're almost ready. So they are very passionate, both of them, passionate about serving our customers, and that is what they really see their role as doing. Yes, we see them and they hit the line item as a revenue, but they see them as our customers. They are the people in the community whom we have served directly with our service, and then who might be having some issues. They've had not only a bad day, and now they have a bill. And so they were very mindful of that, talking them through that process, answering their questions, helping them with any resources they can provide. Both of them take their job very seriously and are very passionate about it. Amy happens also to be our Arbinger team builder expert on our administration side, so we rely on her heavily with her expertise and enthusiasm for that. Our financial specialist is Pam Wester. I think you all have met her for your signing responsibilities, and thank you so much for the power signing this morning. She keeps us on track. She keeps us on task. I don't think Gabe or I or anyone could say enough about how absolutely technically skilled she is in accounting and keeping us to the penny on what we do. We are on time, and we are solvent because of her efforts, and she truly does put a lot of effort and dedication into that. So she is not just spreadsheets and numbers and forms. She has a wicked sense of humor as well. HR specialist, Kiona, you may know her as payroll and benefits, and she will be moving into that HR specialist position as Betty departs. She's made her way through the ranks. So if you've been here a long time, and many of you have, you've known her from dispatch and then ambulance billing and then payroll. And so she is well positioned with a wealth of knowledge. She's earned the trust and the support of these guys here and of the team on the admin. So we're lucky to have her taking on that new role to really guide some of our decisions. We've talked a lot about policy, and we've talked a lot about benefits and making sure that we're working with the health and the wellness of our staff, not only administration, but the operations side, and really taking all of that to heart and making sure that we're guiding our crew in the correct way while being fiscally responsible to the department. And then our new payroll and benefits specialist just had her first day on Monday, and she keeps coming back. So it's very exciting. Branda is her name. It's a little unusual. Not Brenda, but Branda. Brothers, we stolen her from NAU, and she has a rich history in benefits and payroll and in general HR type questions. So she started as a student, answering every single question that would come in from any student employee or regular employee there at NAU, and then worked her way up into full-time positions. So she has a great wealth of knowledge about retirement systems, about COBRA, about different benefit options and the laws that are required. She has a great deal of information about the ASRS system, having worked for another state entity. So we are lucky to have her. She's got a lot of enthusiasm. She's great with advanced processes. So she's looking at some of our spreadsheets, some of our manual processes, and is very excited to kind of automate them and bring them up to date and get us onto some kind of streamline path to greater efficiencies, which is really what we're all about there. So gotten your names. In case you didn't catch them, let me know and I will holler them out to you later. But being able to know who you're talking to and for what purpose, it can be useful so you know where you're going the right way. The everyday tasks under the purview of administration are maybe considered mundane. We're not saving lives. We're not out on the rescues. We don't do the calls that keep a fire department in business but we keep a fire department in business. So we're there for payroll, your accounts receivable and billing, the day-to-day in the trenches. Gabe is keeping the bigger picture, the budget, the line items, doing our audit and that kind of piece. But the day-to-day function of getting people reimbursed and getting our bills paid and the payroll out is happening right here in this building, and we're really excited about it. The incoming calls from the public, like John was mentioning, Jody is fielding almost all of them, and then she disperses them to where they go. So if it's a question about ambulance billing, getting that community member connected to the right person who can answer their questions right away, instead of trying to answer it and transferring to somebody who doesn't know, and then somebody else gets it. All of our fire prevention pieces as well, transferring it over to that department when it merits. Answering questions when there's a lot of smoke. That day was incredibly busy at the front desk, and Jody repeatedly saying, "No, thank you, ma'am, there's no emergency." So just that public-facing piece is really important. It saves a lot of work for the gentleman when we're able to answer those simple calls. So that's our basic day-to-day pieces. It's not glamorous, but it's what we do, and it's what we do best. But then there's our higher profile pieces. So we just talked about our strategic plan. Carrie and I and everyone who worked on it together, researching it, getting that information, and thank you very much. We really wanted to put it together in a more visually appealing way, something that the public could really relate to, whether or not they read all the details of the report, something that will showcase what the department does. So as you flip through those pages and see what's in there, we are very grateful to Assistant Chief Coyle for getting us those images, for being on site and getting the images themselves, and then lending them to us so that we can showcase the department for what they do. It gives it a little bit more of a dynamic feel to it, and it's more engaging, and we figure that that's a little bit more front-facing, a little bit more reaching out to our community, letting them know we're not all just about statistics and numbers while they're in there. We can make it approachable. We've talked a little bit, actually a lot, about our health plan. So just kind of an idea of, we've talked about doing that comparison and trying to get some responsible numbers out there for not only our staff members, but for the district, so that the public understands that we don't take this part of our responsibility lightly. So working on that benefits program. Also, the annual report, so that's going to be coming to you shortly. Again, trying to get it into a little bit of a different spin. So instead of it being more like a newsletter, we're going to try to formalize it and get it a little bit more looking like an annual report for you. So we're working on that project and should get it to you shortly.
Is that a sneak preview of what the cover's
Yes.
I always saw it.
Is it a little
Here
sneaky
first.
there? Look, it's another Chief Coyle photo there too. So just a little kind of peek of what we're working on there. Some other pieces that we're doing going forward, projects coming, we've talked about those through several points today, the Lexapro policy standards. So while there's some pieces that are distinctly happening on the operations side, the knowledge base is coming from them. We're going to kind of organize it and put it together. It's a team effort between our two sides of the house, of making sure that it's understandable, that it is legitimate, it's defensible to the letter of the law, that it's actionable, and then that we're organizing it in a manner that makes it accessible, because doing all this research and getting it out there does us no good if we can't access it. Along those same lines, we're working on a Laserfish records retention program, so really trying to also clean up. We have a lot of paper. We don't need it all here. So going through the new laws, every time there's a new guideline, staying on top of those. That's being spearheaded as a partnership between our Carrie and through John's assistant, Carla. So they're kind of doing the teamwork of all of the mass amount of records we have, finding out what the appropriate schedule is to discard them, disposing of them properly, storing them in the best way we possibly can while we have them. And part of this program is getting it all digital. So if we can get it digital, get it up into the cloud or into an organized and protected, secure system that's not in our purview but someone else's, so it's housed and protected, then it takes a little bit of that liability off of us. We're pushing as much of it to the state as we can, and we're excited about that. So we're working on that program. And then it looks like Jason's back to talk about accreditation. So that's kind of the next lead-in, is we're going to help that team with organizing those pieces, keeping it mostly, right from an administrative perspective, keeping it on calendar. Let's keep it scheduled, follow up, what help do you need getting these reports put out, what research can I help you do, and then getting it formalized, finalized, and published so that we're ready to go with the accreditation process.
If I have a
Yes,
question
sir.
with regard, it's great with this org chart and so on and so forth, and adding the names to it. Here on this iPad, we have a address book, but there's the people here on the org chart are not listed here, so that we as board members can look on here and go down and see who's responsible for what and their phone number or contact.
Intentional
Or is that a chain of command thing?
problem.
Okay, just wondering.
But let me know if you want to talk to somebody. We're happy to connect you.
Okay.
Normally, I'll give Jody a call, say, I need to talk to Keona about something, or I need to do, of course, I usually just, as the chief in.
He's got his plate full though.
In all seriousness, if there was a way to upload a contact book to the thing, we can check with Jeremy and
Yes.
see it. I'm just giving you a hard time.
I started already. The people that I've contacted on the phone, what have you, I put their name and phone
You
number
just
in here. So
keep
and so
your own records. They're probably better than ours, but we will work with you on anything that you'd like to have access to. So certain things we do keep kind of internal and so forth, just for the protection of the firefighters and so forth. We'll get you in touch, but we're not going to give out their information, not to anyone. That's not what they're here for. But us, we're your administrative team. You need to be able to reach us, and so we'll make sure that you have our contact information. Names is a good start, but we'll get you the rest of it. The format of the emails is thankfully exactly the same all throughout almost throughout all of the fields. So you could probably guess how to get us. But we will reach out and make that connection for you. All of these changes administratively are really just to try to get us streamlined and working more effectively, more efficiently, and raising our standards. So that's the whole purpose. Sometimes people can get themselves concerned that when you put in some standards, are we in fact raising them? And that's always our goal, is to make everything that we do better. And it's better for us, it's better for the community, it's better for you. And so we're doing everything we can to present all of those pieces. Very last piece that we have from the administrative side is all of those pieces that we can do to do community outreach. We get the gentlemen involved when they can, our firefighters involved when they can. The leadership team usually tends to guide it. And we're looking for as much buy-in and participation from our crews, from the staff as we can, to get out there, to be in the community, working with the community, and answering that question that you had asked earlier: what does a firefighter do when they're not fighting a fire? And maybe it's at the Rotary Chili Cook-Off, maybe it isn't, but it's in the schools, and it's doing fire prevention, and it's doing goodwill, and it's participating in the events in the community that make us part of the community. So this is our event coming up on Saturday. Those aren't pictures of us, but they're pictures I could come up with while I was in here. And but we cooked chili this week, and we're going to be out there serving the public and answering their
14 gallons
questions.
of chili, by the way.
I'm going to miss it.
I'm going to miss it too. I'll be in Chicago.
14 gallons of chili looks really awkward in gallon bags. I'm
That's
just
the one at the
going to
Lock
say.
Pocket?
Yeah.
It is. So we encourage people to come out. We've been doing it for years. We do say that it is Chief's award-winning recipe because it is
I
award-winning.
got offered up a new recipe last night, so maybe we'll try a new one next year.
Oh,
We'll see how we do this year.
And we might have to have 2 entries. Maybe we can do half and half.
If you live in VOC, you'll have to go out through Cornville to get there.
I live in Flagstaff, so I will take quite the route. But we're excited about it, and it's just one more piece that we see the administrative side doing, is trying to really help find these events, coordinate them as best we can, drum up interest and enthusiasm and excitement, and just kind of draw the team together. I I don't present the way everyone else does. So if you have questions for me, ask them at this time because I'm done.
We've got a couple comments, if no questions.
Excellent, excellent.
The comment I have for both you and Carrie is that,
Heidi.
both Carrie and yourself, is that, you know, having sat on your interview boards and seeing the transition from Trish to the two of you to where we're at today, I couldn't be happier for what we have, and I think the chief would agree that that transition has been seamless at the very least. And the importance of administrative staff from this board member, I fully understand it. It's so important, it's unbelievable. And for every one soldier on the street, you know, for every one firefighter out there, there should be at least 10 of you guys in support of that in the different jobs that are needed to be done. And we simply just don't have those kind of numbers. So I appreciate all the different hats that you guys wear in the course of your daily activities. So thank you guys.
Oh, well, thank you for that. And, you know, we would say that we just need one of us for every 10 of you because we we wear the hats, and that's what we do. That's our job, and that is how it's how we work. We work together as a team, coordinating. The strategic plan was absolutely a coordinated effort. All of it is, and just trying to really foster that idea, get some better communication going, foster that idea of a partnership that we can really solve a lot of problems if we put our heads together and come up with ideas and roll with them. We'll do good, and that's what we all want to do. We have that common goal.
The human resources manager, the retirement of that position, not only the retirement of her, but of that position, that obviously a lot of thought went into that. Will Kiona be able to do everything that is normally done by a human resource manager?
That's our intention, and thank you for that question. Those decisions were made before I was hired, and so my coming on in the position that I'm in was part of that restructure and part of that discussion. So part of what the human resources manager position, part of that job came to me, and then most of it will go to Kiona. So Betty Johnson, who's our departing HR manager, has been, to say grooming, has been training and coaching with Kiona for some time as the position has been put into place, that will be the progression. And she's confident that it's all in place, that it's a reasonable transition from payroll benefits into an HR position. They've been dealing with a lot of the same questions. And then it comes to that, maybe the upper level coaching, that's where I would step in. The key component that's being removed from the HR management position and then the specialist position that's been created is truly the management aspect. So it's taking that layer away from a person so that they can do the human resources related job as needed, where they're not also then supervising that person. That can sometimes create a conflict where if you have to answer questions and address a matter in a human resources aspect, it can be complicated by the fact that that is also then your employee. And so on the administrative bent of that was a layer that muddied the waters a little. This keeps it clean and as approachable for all staff members to address human resources, whether you're operations or administration. Then now it's equal, instead of it being this interesting grab with you're my supervisor and you're in charge of HR. So it kind of cleans that piece up. We're excited about that transition, and we think it will be more beneficial to more of the team.
Thank you. That's
Thank
a good
you.
explanation. Thank you.
So a couple things. One is, having three new folks, Heidi, Carrie, and Branda, step in the last 2 months. I guess you've been here almost 8 weeks, or maybe a little bit, 8, 9
Almost.
weeks, and 7 weeks behind us, and then Branda in her first week. Already in the first week of Branda being, the first week, and they're jumping in both feet and really already shining. Not just like, show me where the office is, and show me where the copy machine is, and show me where the coffee maker is. It's high-level projects the first week, already making impacts. Pretty exciting stuff. I mean, for me, for Dave, who sat in on the interviews, as you spoke to, we saw characteristics and things which when you sit in an interview and you got 30 minutes to show us what you got, and it's really cool, and you're like, oh, this feels really good, I think they're going to be a good fit. Exceeded the expectations of me on the two here. I wasn't on Branda's interview panel, but on these two have already exceeded my expectations in a short while. And certainly we had highly capable and folks in those positions before, so by no means taking away from them. But in this natural progression we've seen and expectations and skill sets and all that stuff, I'm kind of like, okay, all those things on that to-do list, we're going to start getting them to done, because it's these guys like, yeah, I got this done already. I got this done. And I asked Heidi, you've been busy with the work, and how you not staying awake? She goes, I already got half the round report done while we were doing this whole thing. I'm like, man, like that's good stuff, and it's a team effort, because that was happening in Carrie's world before with Tricia, in her office. So while she's going to have a 94-hour long meeting to transcribe or do minutes for, she's already working on this stuff, and we're already halfway, getting there to those type of things. So teamwork is working really well. Absolutely, Heidi's bringing, with this new position and the admin services manager position, really, here's I think it's going to look like, and I think we underestimated what it's going to really look like. She's taking it that much further and going to make things that much better. So that's really cool. I kind of call it the glue that keeps everything together, is this admin team, as you kind of spoke to. And so they're great folks that work really hard. The moving all the people around stuff, that's the agile, the nimble part that we've spoken to already a few times. Hey, we're going to try something different. I think it's going to work with Kiona. I really do. I think it's really going to work when we put Carla in CRM. I think it's really going to work with whatever we're doing. And it's been working. Once in a while we find a miss, and we got to retool some stuff or whatever, but the team is committed. We didn't mention on the chart, when you looked at it on the chart, you'll see the kind of some color that's, I don't know what this lavender looking color is, admin finance piece, but the GIS specialist really sits on the operations side and really falls under the assistant chief of operations, although has kind of an admin, in the admin world. So, she's kind of a crossover, reports to the ops chief, but definitely hangs out with our team quite a bit. And certainly Carla, who's yellow in this case, in the community risk management model, and reports to John as an admin function. So she's, again, kind of a hybrid. Clearly where she reports is in the CRM world, but it's kind of cool to have these kind of fringes where we all then blend together and hey, what's going on over here? What are you working on? And what can I help you with? And it's a cool thing. So very proud of the admin staff. I will say lastly that the high-level projects that we're working on, having an admin person like Heidi, saying, hey, I'm going to jump in and take care of accreditation or Lexipol. I don't know that we had some of those capacities. Certainly people that had skill sets that would have been advantageous to us, but I have a strong feeling it won't just be admin keeping us on task. It's going to be, here's your product. Because I've already done a few things. I'm like, hey, I got that done already. I'm like, I just gave it to you like yesterday. Yeah, I know, but it's all done. Here it is. I'm expecting a considerably longer turnaround time, and then I'm like, well, let me see. And it's like, ooh, that's better than I thought it was going to be. And it's it's Heidi, it's Carrie, it's everyone on the team for that matter. So we're really elevating that stuff, and I just can't say enough for what our admin team does and the commitment that we have as a team. With that will be some POs coming. Last time I know we talked about doing some office furniture. There were some questions like in CRM, and if you go back to CRM and see what we did, well worth the $13,000 we spent on reorganizing their workspace. We got some other moves coming in. Heidi was really lucky. She got to be in the light duty office, which is right in the hub, the heart of everything. So her first 2 months, she's learned so much just by sitting at her desk and listening to whatever
It's very
chaos goes
informative
on.
listening to the mailroom.
Yeah, drive-bys, as I call them, whatever's happening, and then they realize when they hear a giggle in another room that she's there. It's like, oh, I heard that. But we're going to be moving some people around the office. We will be seeing a purchase order shortly at some point for some office furniture and things like that. I highly believe in that efficiency, having a workspace that's conducive and not just, well, I found a desk over in the garbage, can we make that work? That's not the way I operate. I think you really have a good workspace. We spend a lot of time there, and we want to be efficient. So those are the type of things we're committed to, and moving some folks around, which is a hassle, but getting the right people in the right places versus doing just what's the easiest. So Heidi will be coming upstairs to be part of the management team where we're, the executive management type folks are at, and we'll probably be moving Ed downstairs just from some practicality pieces and things like that. But if that's what we end up doing, but something like that, some moves in process. So it's good stuff, and we thank everyone for all the hard work. We're getting close to the end, folks. This is good.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
So another pinch hit for Buzz here on accreditation. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
It's a marathon meeting when you're swapping out mics.
Yeah, really. Yeah. So, the term accreditation, what does that mean to us? What is it for those of you that haven't been a part of it? So it's fundamentally what it is through the Center for Public Safety Excellence. They have an international standard, an international adopted process for fire departments to become accredited. Anybody that's worked in schools or in hospitals, they know that accreditation is a big deal. It's also a lengthy process. That's no different than it is for the fire service. It is a big thing to take on, and but why I personally think it's important. Then I'll kind of quickly go through the steps, but is because when you're accredited, you take the common practice of your profession and what the best practice of your profession is, and you look at your real world situation and you create benchmarks that fit somewhere between where you are right now and what that idealized state is, but what's realistic to reach. And then those benchmarks, whether they're in response coverage time or response times, whether they're in the levels of training and certification we're going to get, all the different multiple facets of what it is to be a fire department, and then you aspire to meet them. Sometimes accreditation for fire departments is scary stuff because it definitely changes the status quo, and you can't be an agency that hides things and work towards accreditation. It just the two are not. They are certainly mutually exclusive. They are not compatible. So and really because we're gonna open ourselves up to peer evaluators from other agencies after we get to that point in the process, and we're going to say, hey, this is what we think we are, and this is where we think we should be, and they're going to come in there and say, yeah, you're right, you guys are there and this and that, but you said you're here, but you're not really quite there here, looking at all the numbers, because you provide them with all of it, and they say, you sure you can make it from A to Z, or maybe you should just try to get to L or M for starters, and so that's, but in my mind, that's awesome because that one of the statistics guys said the data will set you free, and in a lot of ways you're certainly accountable to it. But at the end of the day, it gets everybody on a level playing field. When we're being the board about things, we'll have numbers and we'll have what we'd like to do. Now that doesn't mean there's some things about it that I think are a lot better than like the NFPA practices and stuff. And I guess one of the best examples is say turnout times, 60 seconds, 80 seconds, depending on which type of call folks are supposed to be out the door. If you look at our average time to get from point A to point B, and you look, especially because those things are strictly dealing with fires, and then if all of a sudden you say, hey, we just met our 60-second or 80-second response time, but we also have had a 30% increase in knee injuries or twisted ankles or something, people running to get, then you look at it and you say, wait a minute, what have we gained and what have we lost? And so it gives you, when you start getting that data, then you can measure, hey, maybe people need to be on it to go out the door. They need to be, but maybe with the way our stations are designed, we need to adjust that expectation to prevent some untoward consequence. And so accreditation allows for that versus just taking a bullet, a template of what we're supposed to be. I think to be fair, there's going to be other perspectives and stuff from company officers. Everything that's going to be really important as we get further along in this process to make sure that everybody understands the whys. So, some of the benefits are that it helps us to identify our high-risk areas because we take that deliberate assessment of everything, and instead of just relying on what we intuitively think maybe our high-risk areas, and then all of a sudden through that discovery, there may be things that come up higher, there may be things that drop down lower. There is strong support in the fact that it increases safety and wellness, safety for the community, as far as for the responders and stuff, because again, it takes a more deliberate look at things. And it provides, in my mind, while the burning babies approach is certainly something the fire service is used to, using an emotional argument to argue for funding or whatever. Yeah, I don't know. I personally don't think that's the right way to do it, because you run out of emotional arguments, or you go up against somebody else's stronger emotional argument, and at the end of the day, then we're not giving you guys good information to make decisions with. So, it provides the rationale for funding, and it more clearly articulates the consequence if we choose not to fund certain things than the emotional argument. Some of the negatives about it is time and labor intensive. It is most certainly between that and the Lexapol stuff to get all of our policies and procedures and everything in line, which is kind of an inherent component of doing this. It's going to be a heavy lift. It's going to be a lot of work. Sometimes the results that come out of it, because it is it's certainly a more structured process. There's external evaluation and everything. It may not align with what everybody in the organization wants. If all of a sudden it said that, hey, that station that we have staffed at a certain level, their staffing should be down by 2, and the other station over here should be up by 2. That, if you're the station that's losing 2 folks to another station, that may not necessarily align with your expectations. So there's some of that. And there's some annual fees. We have to train people, so there's a time commitment and stuff there. There's going to be some costs, whether they're opportunity costs or whether they're actually hard costs to go through the work. It's probably going to be a combination of both, but there is going to be an amount of effort that's going to have to be put forth to do this that isn't going to be available to do other things. So, with that, the steps is we register as an applicant agency, which we already are an applicant agency. Assign an accreditation team and accreditation manager. I know we have a team. I'm scared to ask who the accreditation manager is, because I think I might know the answer to the question. Yeah. Well, Buzz is actually, he's the one that's been most involved in the process, and so the next thing says attend the class, learn the process. And now the self-assessment, and part of that self-assessment is along with our, these policies and procedures, and that's ongoing, and I don't have a timeline for it yet. I think over the coming month I will, as far as get some measurable benchmarks, but right now I do not have a timeline for completion. Create a strategic plan, and we do that. Standard cover document, which I think is going to be super insightful once we get that done, but for response times on different calls in different areas, especially with Tammy's help and the GIS capabilities she has. Look at some of the stuff like you talked about, the traffic. What does that do into our response time? How often do we send a Station 4 out to Station 3's area now that we have Station 6 there? It's a lot less, but when we do certain times a day, especially during certain weekend days, I used to think it was just the summer, but now I think it's everything but, the second 2 weeks in January maybe are like slow, and that's it. But, how does that affect us? What do we, and so is there some way, do we need to be more dynamic about staffing because of that? Or is that, it leverages conversations that we can have later on with Arizona Department of Transportation or whomever owns the roads, and when it comes to building and choosing not to put in pedestrian overpasses, say, and instead choosing to allow people to walk through every freaking road. So, there's a lot of stuff there that will help us with. And then we do the on-site inspection and the report. So we invite people that have expertise in this area from other agencies in here to turn over the rocks, look what we say, see if it's true, and then hopefully at the end of that, then we receive our letter of acceptance, deferral, or rejection. Hopefully we receive our letter of acceptance. I believe are the 3 alternatives. So again, Buzz is much more up to speed on this than I am. I just the time is I think I did a short time when I found out Buzz was sick, and I needed to react to that. I started to do some more research on it. He can tell me about parts of it. But that is what I know about the accreditation process.
So where I came from in Illinois, we were accredited in 1998, and every 5 years you have to be reaccredited. So they are up for their 20th anniversary or their 4th reaccreditation or 3rd or however that would go. And very organized group where I come from, and they actually had to defer because the new addition, their concept of continuous improvement model they've created, their renewal process is continually getting better and more specific, and the newest, latest edition required a group that's been accredited for almost 20 years to realize that, hey, there's a different way to do it and a better way to do it, and so they weren't able to get their stuff together and had to defer their stuff. So the process is very legit. It's not a pencil whip and a sticker you get to buy and say, wow, we bought this cool thing. The records that we'll have when we're done are voluminous. Jody's working on creating a cabinet with all the different files that you need to do to keep all the criterion separated and organized and stuff like that. And it's a cool process, and I've been through the process as a operations guy who was like, what's this thing all about? It doesn't really matter, to a guy in the management side going, wow, this is actually really pretty good. So I kind of understand the need to have the buy-in and get everyone's understanding, just as much so on the board level. There are costs to it, there are expenses, there are opportunities where we may be asked. There's not, almost always, at the end they have suggestions. You need to work on this, you need to work on that, and there's some that are, I forget the word, like a critical deficiency and a material deficiency and a whatever the other one would be. But anyway, so hey, you should really work on these, and these you have to get done, and then you have to commit to that, and you may not get accredited until those are done, or if you promise to do them and you show you're working towards it. There's just different variances to it. But you'll end up going to a hearing, an actual hearing, and they'll play it on TV. So in August, they'll be in Dallas, and you can actually go to the accreditation's website and watch. It looks like C-SPAN when they hire a company to do all this, but you're watching, and it's like a congressional hearing almost. And they've even changed so much that they realize they ask the chief all these questions, but they'll, if we go, we'll have the team all sitting in back, and I'll be up front with this, and they'll just go, you're with Sedona Fire? And I'll just say, yeah. All right, I got a question. Chief said this. How's this work in your organization? Is that real? And this is like at a hearing, and they're doing that to make sure it's really not just the chief that has all the answers, but the whole team, and it's really it's neat stuff. So I look forward to the process. It's a lot of work, and so back to what we've been saying all day, we have a lot of work already on our plate. So when Jason says, I don't know how long it's going to be, it's not in weeks, it's not in months, it's in a year to 2 years away, I think, until we're really ready. So if that makes either of you feel better. Again, you can't pencil whip it.
So Chief, are we looking to maintain our accreditation or to upgrade it to the next level higher?
No, we don't have accreditation. This is different than ISO.
ISO
is
rating.
Insurance service organization, completely different.
Okay.
Well, they have a crossover. If you're this or that, they have some credits that you can maybe get, but accreditation is a completely separate acknowledgement and a completely separate recognition.
Okay.
So the benefit that I see for the accreditation part is that it takes into account all the disciplines.
Mm-hmm.
So that whereas ISO is just measuring just our, did I again? 3 mics into it. We've got to be close enough now, right? So as the ISO, just looks at things that are relevant to structural firefighting.
Right.
The accreditation, we'll talk about, like, our technical rescue team is 15 people, the right number. Well, why? How many technical rescues do we do that require that level of expertise? Maybe we need more of the hazmat thing we were talking about. Maybe what I think about having it as an operational level, some extra components about plugging and diking and that kind of thing, maybe it needs to be above that. Maybe, the helicopter rescue thing isn't necessarily as valuable as somebody may think it is, or maybe we need to commit more resources towards it. And so we'll look at each one of those things.
Okay.
So, yeah, definitely didn't start at the start there.
They do have a little bit of a connect, but they are totally different animals.
Yeah, and I think too one of the connections is that it's professionalism. If you're somebody that has a good ISO rating, I would submit that's you probably have some of the inherent characteristics that can get you towards the good accreditation. It's just going to be harder.
Yeah, they really measure, there's some overlap, but they really are, focus is, ISO is a lot on just the response capabilities. So it's the water supply, it's your training, it's your dispatch, public education. There's maybe one other component I'm not thinking of. This is about administration, rules, policy, procedure, fiscal planning. So, I mean, there's parts for the board, how we're operating, what our fiscal sustainability is, what, you know, I mean, it's
And strategic planning.
strategic planning. It's, you know, and it's not just, hey, we have a strategic plan, but it's how are you actually implementing it? Again, we just didn't make one because I heard you were coming to, and, you know, it's how are you doing? And that's why I'm saying it takes time. We need to get some of these things, our policies, updating our policies, not just the one time before we did this. It's every year, are you touching these policies? That's where Lexipol will help make us even that much better and prepared and doing it. And yeah, it's just, it's everything. It's the 90th percentile. They're the ones that are driving us to look at that 90th percentile instead of everyone using the average. They really say, hey, what's the 90th percentile that you can get to calls in an urban, a suburban, a rural, or a wilderness area at whatever number that is. Well, that creates us to have an opportunity to go, hey, this is an urban area, or a suburban area rather. This is a rural area, and this is a wilderness area, and not just go, here's all the numbers, but we're making the mark, we're making the mark, we're not making the mark. And as Jason said, it might be okay saying, hey, we have calls in this area. We're not going to go build a fire station just for these 12 calls that we, you know, don't handle. It doesn't, they're not trying to make you want to go build a firehouse because of that. And we can validate, justify that, and meet our marks. So it's exciting. It's a little unnerving as a fire chief because it's a lot of work and it's very vulnerable. So at the end of the day, we got a great fire department. We know we do, but you bring in 5 strangers, or I don't know, it's 3 or 5 that they bring in now from across the world, and they pick you apart. And
So they may not be asking you as a fire chief a question. They may be asking a member of the team who's sitting
Oh,
somewhere
yeah.
behind you.
oh yeah, you as a board, you'll have a big part of this as a board. You'll have yeah, they'll be drilling down, going by a guy in the fire. You know, not just saying, hey, do you guys have a, you know, a hose jacket? You know, where's it at? Like ISO does. It's going to be, you know, far more in depth than do you have a hose jacket. Who really cares? It's, hey, these guys say you have a policy on, you know, cancer prevention. Do you really have 2 sets of tourniquet? Can you show me? What do you guys do for, you know, after the fire? You know, yeah, we decon, we have the wipes, we do the stuff. All right, good, 'cause that's what the chief said you do, but I want to make sure you know that's what you do. Because it's a real, again, checkbox is what we're supposed to be doing, but we don't really do it. They'll do all that stuff.
That kind of, I hearken back to studying for captain's position, what have you. You know, 12 volumes of policy, 12. Of course, he can ask you questions from any one of them, along with the NFPA and blah, 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 blah. But, so I was studying and what have you, and now I'm looking back on him thinking how important those policies were for the line firefighter and what have you. Because now the line firefighter, he has them on his shelf in every fire station. What have you. You can pull one off on a particular subject and so on, and read up on the policies. And apparently, an addendum comes in and it's changed and so on and so forth. When it's changed, everybody in the station knows that it was changed and so on, keeping current with policy. And so it's a valuable tool. And with this accreditation, what have you, it's just, I mean, it will really show those people coming in just how the department feels about ensuring that their people not only adheres to policy, but you know, admins, everybody stays current with it and so on. So,
I believe there's less than 300 in the world that are accredited in the world.
wow.
And I think there's over, I think it was 4,000 or 8,000 fire departments in the country. If I'm remembering the numbers right.
How about AZ?
AZ, there's 200 and about 225 organizations, fire and departments and fire districts, round number, and I bet there's 6, 8 maybe. So if you take that across the country, doing your math there or whatever. We got a good representation. Illinois has a very large number of accredited, so there's states that don't have any accredited folks. So it's about the organization, not about the status, but it just tells you something about the process and the level of commitment. We're almost there, folks. This is awesome. Last item.
Well, thank you, Chief. I appreciate your presentation on the accreditation. Okay, that brings us to our last item on the agenda, and that's the discussion on this Sedona Fire District's Fire Board Handbook. I brought mine, but I think everybody has their own. If you have not gone through it yet, I think you ought to. A large portion of what Bill Whittington's presentation is contained in the book, and having reviewed the book prior to today's meeting, I was able to follow Bill's presentation much easier. And this is invaluable, I guess is the correct word for us, and it's something that every board member should have had years ago, and hopefully they receive as the new ones come on board. But with that said, I'd like to open up for any questions that we may have about the board, or Chief, you may have something to add.
No, I don't. I think Tricia did a fantastic job putting it together. This doesn't supersede law, so just understand that, we're not approving it today, but if you want to approve it, we can put it on the agenda for the next board meeting. As laws change, this will become out of date. We'll do our best to keep it up to date and keep it current, but I just want to be clear that there's, what's in my book, so it's got to be true. That's the downside to putting this together. But I think it's a great start. I think it gives you a good overview, and it's a place to go to at least keep your stuff on the shelf, and you can start from there. So
I see a lot of great test questions.
yeah, if we're gonna promote you to chairman or something. I see the assessment center questions.
Never mind.
So with that said, I think it's important that we do go through this. We, in all likelihood, will agendize it for approval as a document that we can hand out to every board member.
I'm going to ask Carrie to take one gloss through this before when we bring it to you, and we'll maybe redline what it is. I saw a couple places where it had my name or Jeff's name in it. I think it should just be fire chief and assistant chief operation. Just kind of look for some generic opportunities. I saw 3 or 4 places where that was at, but otherwise I think it's fairly neutral in its language and everything like that. And thank you, Jason. So I think it's a good place to start if you got a question, and that's what the key is. And there's certainly this law this comes out of the Arizona Fire District Handbook, the red book as we used to call it. Yeah. And so obviously you're taking this into something like this, and there's an MOU in here and all kinds of different stuff. So there's a lot more information in here. We typically provide you guys. They don't even make this anymore. They give you a thumb drive. Which
just
is
wore my printer out.
Yeah. Well, I don't recommend you print it. But I was a proponent of getting rid of this and going to a thumb drive is just the cost in this was very expensive, and then it's outdated the minute they make a new law and all that type of stuff. I still go to this 2011 copy to at least be a start to go, hey, I'm looking for a board member responsibility. Boom, here it is. I'm looking for open meeting law. Here it is. What's it, A3, A4, what's that again? Whatever it's all. Yeah. I find it very easily in here. So I strongly recommend that you get versed in this as board members. And I think we talked this morning a lot about the legalities, the expectations, there's a little bit of code of ethics in here, a little bit, talking about how we work with each other, treat each other, respect one another. Some of the Robert Rules of Order, and it's not mentioned, I didn't see in here at all, Robert's Rules of Order in here. But from a board member's perspective, having the chair be able to run the meeting, and typically, you're asking for permission to speak to the board chair. He's running the meeting. If that's how you decide to run your meetings, or if you want it not, that's fine. But it would be good to have an idea of how you want to run those, so that we all follow the rules and we don't step out of bounds and have awkward moments for misspeaking or whichever it may be. So you'll find some of those type of things in here, and some of them you'll just find by watching other meetings. I was doing some research for this meeting and tried to find just kind of like decorum and how to work with people, and I found a video, and I still have it actually, but the link and the time. But there's a spot like in Pima County, and there's a difficult citizen at the lectern, and just how the board chair, just carefully asks, guides everyone through the process, which could have been very uncomfortable. Or recently at a local board meeting, there were some very uncomfortable comments made at the dais between a couple, board members, and there's a time and place for things, and I think our board works very well together, and you guys are all focused on our mission and our purpose, and we appreciate that. So thank you for your professionalism and your interest in what you do as board members and what we do as emergency service providers and administrative professionals. We know our boundaries. We know where we're supposed to be and where we're not supposed to be. And when we start to hone in those little areas, people kind of will give you a little nudge. Hey, just watch that and understand. Our goal is to be as transparent as we can to you. We'll give you whatever you want, whatever you need. You're entitled to all that stuff. There's a nice process for that to happen smoothly and patiently. If there's something that's really needing attention, you always have my number. It's a quick call. If it's something else, we'll get to it, however that is. In here, there's talks about the process as a new board member. So I know we need to get you through some fire station visits here, and with Pichura leaving, I sent Jason a note already about trying to get you through some fire station tours and things like that. So I got to figure out if he's going to take you or you're going to connect you with the battalion chiefs and make some own scheduling and go with them. I got to figure that out. We're just, as you saw, there's lots of stuff happening, but we want to get that for you soon because it's important for your understanding of what you're looking at and voting on and all those type of things. Other than that, I think that covers most everything that I really wanted to cover today. I don't know, Dave, I'll throw it back to you. Called the meeting or the process here. Did we meet the mark? Did we?
Well, first and foremost, thank you and Chief and your staff and on behalf of the fire board. You guys did one heck of a job in drawing this agenda together and creating the presentations that you did. Board, is there anything else that you'd like to say individually about today's event?
Well, yeah, oh, good, please.
Very comprehensive, very nicely done. Obviously, I wish I had it when I started 2 years ago. But as I'm leaving, I'm glad I know what I know now.
Yeah. Good.
Yes, and I just want to thank you, Mr. Chair, for making this happen, because this was your brainstorm and your idea, and it's been very fruitful, very useful. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And thank staff for all the work that went into it.
Gene?
Well, again, thank you. Maybe you have to come from an LA City guy.
County guy.
Anyway, thank you very much, everyone. And this was for me, it was a steep learning experience. I'm trying to listen more than I speak, but sometimes I have to chime in. But thank you very much. I look forward to today, in fact, and it met all my expectations.
So we'll do it again next month?
Okay, let's do it.
I don't know about next month, but
Every other year.
yeah, every year. Anyway, again, thank you very much. You did meet my expectations and answered most every question, created additional questions that we can bring up, and hopefully, to me, it brings a little bit more of a comfort factor when I do get in front of, at the board meeting now that I'm in this seat rather than down in the corner. I'm looking forward to it. So again, thank you all, and unless there is anything else, I'll adjourn this meeting.
Wow, before 4:30.
Wow, good.
They said